Horizon Thunder Sphere! Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, joining you this Sunday evening. It's 6:30, and you're right where you should be, here with us. So, welcome. We here at this channel sometimes like to do these Sunday streams, and I figured why not do one today a little earlier than usual, because I'm not watching I lost my headphone. Thanks, Ben. Because I'm not watching the Super Bowl, so why not? Here we are, and I asked the patrons if they would like to see anything in particular, and the best vote was Derek chooses whatever he wants to do. But the other option was to watch the Puppy Bowl. I got the Puppy Bowl queued up over here just in case we do decide to go over to that route. Although I do love puppies. So I mean, what can I say? So hopefully everyone's doing well tonight. So I actually I don't know what we're going to do tonight. I mean, it's kind of just a random hangout for people who don't want to do anything else tonight. There's some basic RPG stuff that we could always cover or go over. There's some RPG systems that I don't think I have really talked about and wouldn't mind going over on in depth. But honestly, I leave it up to the small handful, inevitably, of people that will be here tonight to really set the tone, and we'll hang out that way. I don't think we're going to get more than, I would imagine, 20-25 people tonight. So, just a small intimate affair with our favorite patrons, for the most part. But hi, name's Derek Melinda, and welcome. Oh, so let's see what's going on. So lately I've been really, I don't know what the right word is. I've been really struggling to, sort of understand more and more what it is that I want out of a role-playing game system. And I mean, obviously I can have fun with a game system no matter what. But I keep finding myself in this weird space where I find myself simultaneously torn between feeling frustrated by overly complex, overly wrought game mechanics that I appreciate on an academic sense. I do. I like crunchy games. I mean, I won't deny that. I'm a board game fan. I like complex board games. I like games like Magic the Gathering, which is a very complex card game. Maybe one of the most complex games ever created. So I like game systems. But at the same time, I find myself becoming increasingly impatient at the game table. I hate things that just cause the systems to slow down, that cause people having to look things up or, do math or, any of that stuff. Like, it's all very, very, very frustrating to me. And, more and more and more, I want to, sort of just, I don't know, be done with it, right? Okay, hold on a sec. We got a bunch of stuff coming in here. I was upgrading some stuff here. Oh my gosh. All right. Thank you. Oh my gosh. What's going on here with these fucking things? Okay. Anyways, long story short, I find myself in a weird spot for RPGs where I want something simple and quick and easy, but I find that if it's too simple and it's too easy, then I get bored with it, and I don't want to, I want something that I can sink my teeth in too, but I also don't want something that's good. I've come to the realization that the RPG system that I want at the table is sometimes kind of a pain in the ass to deal with at the table, because it's got a lot of knobs and dials and widgets, and it can be very, very, you know, time consuming to make its way through things. Maybe it comes from not having as much opportunity to play anymore. And every time I get to this point, I start thinking, you know, I just need to play, you know, maybe some like 1-page game, like World of Dungeons, or an old school rule set like BX D&D, or, you know, if I want the modern cleaned up version of BX D&D, I can go play, you know, old school Essentials, where there's just nothing on the bones. You know, it's just a skeleton. And I always go, yeah. And then like immediately, as soon as I think about doing that, I go, I think I'd get bored. I would just be like, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great for like a con game, or like if we were to get, you know, today was Gen Con hotel day. So good luck if you, you know, hopefully you had a better luck than some of our patrons in getting a room for Gen Con. I was pretty lucky, and I managed to get one, not as close as I would like. But you know, it's within walking distance. I won't have to take a cab or an Uber or anything like that. And so, you know, it's good. But like a bunch of us are going down to Gen Con this year, and I'm excited to meet up with some knights. We did this last year at the Origins Game Fair in Columbus. We're going to do that again at Origins Game Fair in Columbus. But I haven't been to a Gen Con since 2019, before COVID. And it's exciting to get back. So anyways, you know, we're going to meet some people, and I love the idea of, I'm not actually a huge one-shot fan, believe it or not, but I love the idea of like taking a simple rule set. You know, I see Ben mention Knights of the Road. And, you know, I mentioned BX and OSE and stuff like that. And, you know, it's like, I love the idea of playing something simple and basic, but, you know, would I play that for months at a time? Absolutely not. Hey, we got our first super chat. Thanks, Rivo. Did Derek bat a touchdown from mid-court yet? Yes. The goalie was unable to secure the defensive line, and so the safety was able to score a double play, I think. By the way, thank you, Rivo. I do have, you know, I've got my usual sodas, but I do have some beers tonight. So, you know what? If the super chats will keep me drinking. And the tips tonight are, in order to keep it going. I'm good to go. You know, if you guys are interested, the tips are going. We'll do the whole game if we want to. Hey, you know what, Flint? That's totally fine. Watch the game. Watch this. You know, listen. I honestly, I've never seen a Super Bowl in my whole life. I've never even watched 1 minute of one. It's just never been a game that's interested me. I've gone to plenty of baseball games. The Cleveland Guardians, formerly Indians. You know, I'm not like a season ticket holder, but honestly, if somebody asked me to be one, I would probably go in with them. I like going to the game. I don't like watching on TV. I like hanging out and being in the stadium. That's a lot of fun. And I grew up playing hockey, but I don't watch NHL. So anyways, yes, like as Ben is saying, he's like, this is me. Great for a session or two. After that, I need more meat on the bones. And that's basically where I'm at. Like I dig into a game and I have fun with it. But then after, you know, a couple of sessions, maybe even 5 or 6 sessions, I go, okay, you know, what's next? And I think this is a bigger problem. It's more of a symptom of a larger problem, I should say, that maybe some of all of you out there, and when I say all of you out there, I know that a lot of the people here tonight are from our Night's Last Call Patreon. They're the ones supporting this channel. They support me and Mr. Smith and Mr. Bumbarger, who's coming home tomorrow from his cruise. And it's this. I like RPGs. I like buying RPGs. I like reading RPGs. And there's new ones coming out all the time, Kickstarters and re-releases and all this other stuff. And it's fun to buy them and read them and think about running them and Google at all the cool mechanics. And then maybe even get them onto the table, which is what I'd love to do. But that sort of prices you into a life of playing one shots or multi shots, you know, and maybe it's the DNA of growing up in a game like D&D, but there's still a part of me that loves the idea of a, long duration campaign, right? And a game, a system that you can really sink your teeth into and have this, really lengthy involvement with, that give the game time to breathe and sort of develop. And so it's very interesting because I find, though, that the idea of like committing, right, to a game for a year or 2 years, it's like, man, that is excluding all the new stuff that would come out between now and then. Not to mention the backlog of games that I want to play. So I just haven't really figured out how to deal with that yet. And it's frustrating me, and I'm hoping, to be, perfectly honest, I'm hoping that this channel and the Patreon are a fantastic way for me to explore that opportunity. Because one of the things I want to do with this Patreon in 2023, as we move into the game or into the year, is start setting up games to play with my patrons as a reward for being higher tier or for being, active, awesome members of the group and running games for people. Is say, hey, cool, like you get to play a game with the guy who runs the channel, or with Aaron or with Bob, and I think that'll be fun. But it's also kind of a selfish thing where it's like, maybe this is a great way for me to get some more games on the table. But then I start looking at it and I start thinking, okay, well, I already run, I got 2 streams a week for the channel. I run my home game on Friday. That leaves 4 nights a week that I'm not, doing something. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm trying to take my health more seriously this year and, play racquetball and lift and, try to be more active. And suddenly you just start doing the math on it and you go, man, I don't know how I have the time for all of this. I don't know how you have the time for all of this either. Some of the people out there. It is the case that I am becoming aware that the channel takes up a lot more time, I think, than I think it does. On paper, it's like, okay, I go live 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes we, produce some videos, not in the last couple months, but when we're producing videos, that can eat up another 5 hours a week between shooting and editing. Lately, Bob and I have been working on the studio up, construction up at the studio. Then there's managing it, Discord stuff, all the other admin type stuff. And then obviously spending time just talking with everybody. And I guess if I really took a step back, it's probably like 20 hours a week that I'm spending. So, part of it is probably, maybe it's just a perception of how much time I have available. I know this is like a horrible rant. It's very boring. Let's see what we got. Laughing Out Laws here. I got to make this motherfucker a table. What's up, lol? Let's see. Drekmaw have you played Mothership? It sounds like a lot of fun. I have not played Mothership. I guess you would say some former friends of mine, or the Tuesday Night Games, are the people who made the game. I know it has a lot of fans for the people who are into that sort of aliens, sci-fi horror, even on our Discord. Horror has never really been my genre, so it hasn't been on my top of my list to really dig into and read through. Pumpkin says, yeah, I wouldn't want a long campaign of a super simple system, and yet people did it forever. Even as a kid, I played AD&D 2nd Edition for years and years, and that's not, by modern standards, that is not a very complex game. But I was happy with it back then. Go figure. How important is a level up mechanic to you? Not important at all. I would actually say a gid. I like mechanical advancement and changing, but that doesn't necessarily mean numbers go brrr, like in a PBTA game or something like that. You don't get hit points. Your stats don't skyrocket to the moon. You might pick up new abilities, but it's more of a horizontal growth than a vertical growth. And I actually prefer horizontal growth. You know, if somebody wants to maybe spend some of their limited resources to get a little bit of vertical growth in a certain area of the game, I'm fine with that. But honestly, leveling up in the D20 sense these days, I almost don't care about it. I actually find myself almost dreading it. Like I don't want to be bothered with it. If that makes any sense. Evening, Booth Bay. Evening to you, sir. Booth Bay is going to be coming to Gen Con. Got his room today. I'm playing in a long-running game and multiple shorter games. That's the solution. Damien says the same thing. I'd have a long campaign and have side games to take a break. Yeah, that's pretty good. 12 weeks in a season, 4 systems a year.
Anonymous tipped $25. My favorite long-term games have had one thing in common: enough structure and subsystems to keep things varied, but more importantly, a group that isn't afraid to play around with the Milo and play alternate characters to tell stories within stories.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is, I completely agree with you. Thank you for the tip there, Anonymous. You know, I definitely agree that, I just want to specifically call out something that you said here. You know, enough structure and subsystems to keep things varied, but most importantly, a group that isn't afraid to play around with the milieu and play alternate characters to tell stories within stories. Now, that second part there is interesting, because, well, I agree with the first part, structure and subsystems to keep it interesting, but, you know, play alternate characters to tell stories within stories. Oh, sorry. That was you. Okay, Ben. Thank you, Ben. That was Ben. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. When you said Milu, I thought it was you, but you know, you never know. Sometimes we get some people. Yeah. So, okay, Ben. So maybe you could describe a little bit further what you mean by isn't afraid to play around with alternate characters to tell stories within stories. Like that is, I think that's something that's interesting to kind of think about. Because, I mean, I know you, and like, you know, I mean, you probably like more systems than the rest of us, you know? So like, how do you keep how do you keep that desire to just drop the game that you're playing so that you can go play the next game, right? Like, how do you, it's almost like, it's not buyer's remorse. I never have buyer's remorse. It's more of just like, I don't know. You know, I just feel like I don't want to settle down, if that makes any sense, because I'm like, what if a new game comes around and the new game is the perfect game? Or what if the new game is like just really compelling and has some really great mechanics and I really want to have fun with it and play around with it, and it's like, you know, and then it's like we're now here we are again, you know. Damien says run STA. He means Star Trek Adventures, the 2D20 system for Star Trek, long term, and play other games as holodeck sessions. So there's sort of an ongoing joke that we played Starforge, which is a Iron Sworn game, which is like, you know, the self co-op, you know, PBTA game by oh god, I knew his name and I just literally forgot it. But he you know, there's a move in that game because it's like it's kind of a, you're playing the game by yourself, so there's things like, there's a move in the game like take a break, go to the bathroom, feed yourself, get something to drink. When you come back, you'll be refreshed and your character gets a +1 to their next roll. Like, that's actually like a move in Starforged. And there's like a move within Starforged that says like, take a break to do something else. And so we haven't played in months and months. And in the in-between time, we've played other role-playing games. We've done whole campaigns. We've just started a new one. And the joke is that we're actually still playing the Starforged game. We're just in a nested loop of the Starforged game. We're just taking a break and playing something else, and we're going to get back to it because the game, we never actually did the campaign move. So technically we are locked into that Starforged until we return to it and then eject ourselves from the game. Ben. Oh, I have switched game systems within a campaign to better tell a certain section, but mostly I will zoom out from a scene and tell a parallel story, flashback or forward, and then zoom back. I mean, changing systems is quite dramatic. I mean, that's a mad genius move there. You know, because this is going to be kind of like a side rant here, kind of related to what we're talking about, because what I have a concern there for, Ben, is and I'm going to use like board game analogies here. It applies to role-playing games too, but like there are some board games that I love, and I'm not going to lie to you. They're complex. Sometimes they could take 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours to explain the rules. And you might have a very open group of people who say, let's play it. And everyone sits down and they play it. And maybe you have more experience with it within your group. And everyone goes, they play it, whatever. And they say, that was fun, but it was okay. Maybe we'll do something different next time. But part of the joy of a complex game is going back to it again and again and again, and learning the subtleties and learning the intricacies of that design. And sometimes I feel like people will do a one shot and they almost come away with a worse idea of what the game system is, because it was maybe a bad experience because they didn't quite get it yet. We just did a stream on Blades in the Dark, and I tried as much as I could to talk about the game system, but I was like listening back to part of it, and I still thought, no, there's so much more depth here than I did a job of explaining. It's so easy to hear what I'm telling you and to go play your one shot of a Blades in the Dark game and come away and say, yeah, it was fine, whatever, it's no big deal. And like going, no, you didn't get it. You didn't fully understand how all these systems, tie together to create a sort of a new whole. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, it's impossible to get it right the first time. But yeah, in some ways, it's kind of impossible, to get it right the first time. So it's interesting how part of it is I want to dig into these game systems, and I want to, flip over and really dig into the meat of the game and really see what it's capable of. That I think it's interesting to me, Ben says, I'll get to some of your other messages at first. I'm kind of vibing on what Ben said here. I agree. If you like the system, you should stick with it, but you can keep things fresh by cutting away for a bit, telling another story, and then return, a la Dune. And I'm assuming you don't mean Mutants and Masterminds, but Misfortunes and Miseries, or Miseries and Misfortunes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that, that is those, well, Dune at least really, has a particularly good system for setting that up. Okay. Sorry, I missed some stuff here. Yeah, Boothby. The Booth Bay. He's Bay. Unfortunate Pumpkin says it's such a hassle to level up sometimes, yes. Gid likes the horizontal growth. And I don't mean just around my midsection. I mean, other places. And Boothby says, and now that I think about it, when we were younger, we had a lot more time to focus on a single campaign, ability to play somewhat daily. But see, that's what's funny, Boothby. When I was younger and I had a lot more time, and this was even going back to when I was in college, undergrad, and, it was pretty easy for me. I was home all the time, and, none of us were really in committed relationships or anything like that. So it was really easy for my friends and I to get together 3 + 4 times a week. And, we'd get together on a Friday at 5 p.m. and we'd play till 2 a.m. That's 7 hours of gaming on one day. And we would play the next day just as long.
The Blue Scion tipped $5.
So, hey, Blue Scion, thanks for the $5 tip. I thought I saw you hop in here. I'll get to your thing there. I don't know if you wanted to say something, Blue Scion, but thank you for the tip. Appreciate the support. Thank you. And it's funny though, is back then when we had all this time in the world to play infinite game systems, we just wanted to play the one D&D campaign. That's it. It was like, let's play the same characters over and over and over and over and over again. It's like when you're young, right? That's when you're supposed to be, all hyperactive and hard to, keep focused and attention. It's like when you're older, you should have more of that, ability to focus. But now I find myself being very, ADHD and being very like, Oh, a new shiny RPG. Oh, another new shiny RPG. What? Who just released a new RPG system? Oh, I gotta check that out. And then I flip through it and I go, oh man, I want to play this so bad. And then it's like, before I can even finish the book, bling, 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 you know, a new challenger has arrived. And I feel like I'm just being, you know, pulled in all these places. So yeah. I find that it's more about finding the right group of people to play with than find the perfect game. Rivo, you're right. I think we can all agree that you are right. And to be clear, Rivo, I have a fantastic group of friends that I have been gaming with for 20 plus years. Some people come in, some people leave, some people fluctuate. They come in, they're there for a few years, they leave, life happens to them, and they come back to the group. They're a great group of guys. I would, you know, happily lay down in traffic for any of them. But for me, it isn't quite that simple. I like hanging out with my friends, and I will happily do it with them anytime, any place. But my interest in role-playing games goes beyond the mere activity of fun, if that makes any sense. Maybe it's a sickness. I don't know. But that isn't actually enough for me. I mean, it is important to have a great group of people. There's no doubt they can ruin anything. But I still feel like the nature of the role-playing game and our ability to explore that game system and to use that game system to create compelling moments and exciting events and tension-filled drama is critical to me, and does maybe even outweigh some of those components. Put another way, again, my friends, you know, half my D&D group has been basically the best man for everybody else in the group. I've been Tim from the show, Aaron from the show. I was the best man in both their weddings, right? We're all like best friends. So my friendship with them goes way beyond the gaming group. But some of my best gaming moments were had at conventions with random people who I'd never met before, because the game was that good, because the experience was that good. So it is kind of interesting in that mindset. Maybe I'm just messed up, you know, I don't know. Gid says, I find it difficult to mentally invest in multiple games, let alone multiple systems at the same time. I prefer having 1 or 2 long-term games spanning no less than 1 year. Recently, we just started a new campaign of Legend of the Five Rings. And going into it, one of Mr. Aaron Smith's concerns was, lately we've been playing game systems that tend to lend themselves to shorter campaigns. You know, 10 sessions, 5 sessions, 6 sessions. And there's people like Bob, who, it was up to Bob, I think everything would be a one-shot, because Bob's at the buffet. You know, he looks at this shelf and the new art, you know, Bob's new to RPGs, relatively speaking. He's only played a handful of systems. So for Bob, he wants to go to the buffet. He wants to try sample size of everything because he wants to sort of see what's out there and sort of really get into it. Whereas Aaron, in this most recent campaign, says, look, we've been hopping around from one foot to another foot for years now. I really just want to be able to sit down, invest into, you know, a meal, a campaign, and really appreciate that. Yes, I know there's seafood options and vegetarian options and chicken options, but I just want to get myself a nice big steak and just dig in and focus on that. And, you know, part of my decision to go with like a game like Legend of the Five Rings was because I felt like the game had the ability to have that long-term sustainability. And because I agreed with him, but already, you know, after, you know, 2 sessions, I'm kind of like, oh man, but like, what about insert new game here? You know, what about Avatar, you know, Legends? I really do want to play that game. And oh man, like I do want to tie, you know, like it'd be fun to go back to Pathfinder 2 again. Like, you know, like it's a disease. I don't know how to describe it. Let's see here. I'm way behind. Sorry about this. Let's see. Boothby says, I think the desire we had for long-term campaigns is a factor of age. Younger kids don't like trying new things. As you get older, you become open to variety, possibly. Damien says 2 of their favorite games. There's no leveling up at all. Fair enough. I feel the same. Leveling up is my least favorite part of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Yeah, it is kind of mine for me as well, honestly. Hey! We just had ourselves a lovely, lovely, lovely re-up. Jaham Man has renewed their membership for 2 months. Thank you, Jaham Man. Jaham Man. Thank you, Jaham Man. Sorry, getting caught up here. Unfortunate says, yeah, we just finished our 5-shot of Wicked Ones. Wicked Ones is I think it's a Powered by the Apocalypse. I could be wrong. It's either Powered by the Apocalypse or Forged in the Dark, but it's one of those 2. Game where you're like the bad guys, basically, today. And I only recently feel like I really understood the system, right? Even after 5 sessions, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. And now it's over, you know? Yeah. Ryan, aka the Blue Scion. I'd stay and hang out, but I already have a game session to get to. First live stream for me. We'll send a tip through once I figure out how that works. Have fun. Okay, and you did. So thank you, Ryan. If you're watching this on the VOD, I knew I saw your name pop up real quick, but welcome to the stream, sir, and thank you again for the tip. That was very nice of you. Yeah, how Ben is a mystery that no one quite fully understands. How a human being with a job, which by the way sometimes is like a 16-hour day for him. I know that's not every day, Ben, but the man lives in New York City, so like anytime he has to go anywhere, it's a freaking epic journey of epic proportions. And this man has children, and somehow manages to play more role-playing games than all of us. Oh, and he's higher level on my Discord server than me. So go figure. The man's you must not sleep, honestly. It must just be that. Bill says hello. Bill, welcome. Abuelo says, our table solution has been fantasy for about a year, then supers for almost a year. It works. Yeah, Abuelo, we kind of used to do that. We would alternate between Pathfinder and like Mutants and Masterminds.
Caverns and Cave Trolls tip $25. How many spells does a wizard need? Smile.
Thank you, Caverns and Cave Trolls, for the generous tip there. $25. Thank you, sir. How many spells does a wizard need? Great question. My feeling is 10 to 12. That's my answer. Once my wizard or any spellcaster starts getting like 15 to 20 spells, I just start losing focus and control, and I don't really pay that much attention to them, and they feel like more of a burden than a hassle. If I have less than 10 spells, it doesn't feel like I have enough versatility to be able to sort of say, like, I'd like to be able to take, 1/3 offensive spells, 1/3 defensive spells, 1/3 utility spells. And that's like, okay, that's like 3 to 4 spells if I have 10 to 12. And then I can obviously switch that up. If I want to go more offensive today, I could take 6 or 7 and still have enough spell slots left for a couple of defensive spells and a couple of utility spells. But for me personally, 10 to 12 is like the perfect number, which usually in most RPG games tends to be right around, level 5 to 7. And to be honest with you, that's kind of my favorite levels of the game. I mean, and I say D20, but like, I forget the exact name, but the casters like Magus with just the highest 2 spell levels are much more manageable and thus more fun. You mean Wavecasting. I don't like Wavecasting, William Robinson. And the reason I don't like Wavecasting, William Robinson, is it's just not enough. It's 4 slots, that's not enough. Not a big fan of that. If it was more slots, maybe. 2 and 2 is not enough. Specifically in Pathfinder 2. So that's how I definitely feel about that. Frostjack, if we're talking level-less systems, I was always very interested in Smith's Experience buy system for 4E. Yeah, I mean, it was level-less, but you could just buy all of the components of your level, if that makes any sense. You had to buy an attack bonus, you had to buy this, you had to buy that, you had to buy that. I mean, levels aren't in of themselves bad. The problem with levels isn't leveling. The problem with levels is vertical growth, is basically what it comes down to. This idea of, we need to get stronger in order to fight stronger things. It's just, that's part of RPG DNA that a lot of people still really, really dig. And it's just not a big part of the game for me anymore, honestly. I have become infected, if you will, by the mantra of Root, right? Which is, it matters not what we fight, but what we fight for. At this point in my RPG career, I am more interested in a bunch of, low-level people having an epic confrontation with some totally mundane creatures. If, there's a lot of awesome meaning and drama and pathos involved in that conflict, as opposed to, well, there's a bunch of high-level people and they were fighting a bunch of demons and it was awesome. Well, what made it awesome? What were they fighting? Well, it didn't matter. They were just fighting stuff, but they were high level and their numbers were really high. You should have seen the dice in Foundry VTT. It was there were so many dice, and it was the numbers were 70 and 80. Can you believe that? That, yeah, that just doesn't make it fun for me. If it does, again, I know I'm talking to my audience here, but just because I don't like something doesn't mean that you don't have to not like it. Also, I mean, these are games that I've played for 30 years. So part of it is just I've been there. I've done that, Aaron says, we need tsunami casters. There's a certain amount of sense to that. I mean, plenty of those games already exist, honestly. Fate, PBTA, Forged in the Dark games. Yeah, William Robinson. And I own and had played all of those. They're fine games. They are. They can be very, very entertaining. Again, like I said, the game that, I'm playing Legend of the Five Rings now, but the game that I'd probably really want to next, kind of get to the table is I want to play Avatar Legends. So I think that'll be a lot of fun.
GM Rufus took $25. Story makes the game.
Yeah, story makes the game, and I think that people understand that and they recognize that. Thank you for the tip, GM Rufus. The problem is they start taking shortcuts to get to the story, and they try to make the story happen instead of allowing it to sort of emerge into the sphere, if you will. So yeah, but my concept of story in role-playing games, I think, is very, very different from most people's concepts of story in role-playing games. Hey, William, what's up? You said, my group is pretty trad in taste. I'll definitely hop into the Discord, though. Hey, well, we'd love to have you, buddy, if you're interested in having your mind blown a little bit. Yeah, you've only read PF1, PF2, and a wee bit of some one-page Forge hack, sadly. Yeah. So almost every game behind me is not D20. We've got Powered by the Apocalypse games. We've got Blades in the Dark games over here. We've got some, I think, One Ring, some 2D20 Dune, Star Trek Adventures. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. I mean, right here, I think, is 4th edition D&D. So, anyways, I think story is so important. But for me, story, I think, means something very, very different. And I find the type of story, no offense to anybody. Again, I feel like I shouldn't have to say that, but I do. The kind of story that most people like in an RPG, the kind of story that happens, say, on Critical Role, the kind of story that happens in an adventure path. I find that extremely boring. I think adventure paths are some of the most boring things that have ever been created. I like books. I do. I like novels, and I'm happy to read them, but I do not want to play them. My favorite type of RPG story is just the completely unexpected, completely emergent thing that just nobody was expecting. And it never would have happened if all of us hadn't been in the same room or virtual room together tonight, and the dice had rolled a little differently. You know, I don't remember where I read it, but it said that, you know, when it comes to role-playing games, if your concept for a story can fit inside the mind of just one person, you, then that story is way too small to ever be good. Like, I cannot, I cannot say this enough, but like, you're not that good, you know? You're not better than all of us together. And the crappy, shitty story that we create together by playing and seeing what happens, well, for me, always trump the most expertly, exquisitely written, crafted adventure plotline. Oh my God, subverted expectations. Oh my God, you know, cliffhanger. Oh my God, it was, you know, for me, that bores me, right? I'd rather have the kind of, you know, moment where everybody goes, what even happened tonight? And here's the thing. This is why, like, actual plays, you know, or my perception of actual plays for this channel have always been kind of difficult, because I understand. I'm not an idiot. Okay, I've been going to Gen Con a long time, conventions, and you know, there's this stereotype where it's like, tell me about your character, right? And it's like, nobody cares about your character, right? You're gonna tell them this awesome, amazing story, and everyone's gonna be like, okay, cool, good story, bro. And reality, they're all just like, oh, you know, this is so cringy. Because here's the thing, I get it. The awesome, funny, amazing, awesome, cool story that happened in our session, it's like a good inside joke. It's just, it's not going to be fun or funny or entertaining for anybody else to really see it or be a part of it. But for us who was there, it's amazing. It's incredible. And that I think that's really what I kind of, you know, try to go for in an RPG. It's just those moments of, like, you know, unexpectedness. Now, that being said, I also don't like my campaigns or my sessions to become, you know, three-ring circuses. You know, like, I don't want it to be a joke. You know, sometimes people can get uncomfortable, or people can get, you know, they don't know what to do, so they make a joke. And look, that could be fine sometimes. But, and I don't want every session I run I don't want it to make it seem like I'm trying to go for like this Oscar tearjerker, right? Because it's not. We're not actors. We're not writers. But I also don't want every session to turn into a joke and a joke fest. So when I say, like, unexpected, I think a lot of people think unexpected. They're like, yeah, it was awesome. They killed the dragon, and then we hooked it up to, like, the wizard fashioned an air pump out of the water and a gust of wind spell, and then we hooked it up to the dragon's dead corpse, and we pumped it up like a big Macy's Day balloon, so that way the goblins would think the dragon was still alive, and then we rode around on its back, and we used some alchemist fire to try to turn it into, like, a dragon mechanic. Like, okay, like, you see where I'm going with this? Like, yeah, okay, it's a little slapsticky, right? It's a little, and I mean, to me, that what I just described is like, it's kind of classic Fantasy 20 D&D Pathfinder type shenanigans, which to me is a silly game. It is a silly game. I don't try to take D&D seriously. Any game that has a whole line of spells that summon gigantic disembodied hands to flick people and punch people and squeeze them, games that have, like, flying brooms and magic carpets and, you know, spells that cover you in pig grease and lard, like, it's not a game to really be taken seriously, in my personal opinion. But I don't want every game to necessarily have to become this silly slapstick fest just to become memorable. I like real moments that emerge naturally from the game, is how I would describe it. Let us see here. Gid says, let's build our own TTRPG. Oh, God. Lots of narrative drama and horizontal growth. Yes, designing anything by committee seems like it would be a disaster. Designing a role-playing game by committee seems even more of a disaster. I mean, I think a lot of the problems with Pathfinder 2 come from design by committee. And our particular group of people here, the Knights of Last Call Discord, that would be like herding cats because nobody agrees here. Whatever the opposite of echo chamber or groupthink is what we are. Nobody even agrees with me. I fight with my own patrons more than I fight with people on YouTube. Let's see. We're just going back here. Sorry, just catching up on some chats. If I miss you, I apologize. I'm sorry. We just got a lot of chats here. Hey, GM Scott's here.
GM Scott tipped $25. Can't join you at Super Bowl party.
Yes, naturally.
Here's the money I could have spent on a square. But instead, just give me 2 numbers, each between 0 and 9. Thanks.
Will do. Thank you. 2 numbers between 0 and 9. Got it. Well, wait, that would be like a D100 roll, right? I've got a D100 right here, ready to go. Let's roll it. Okay. It came up 16, 1 6, 1 6, or 6 1, but it was a 16. So D100 in the house. Thank you, GM Scott, for that. And I haven't updated this, but thanks to Mr. GM Scott here, we have passed through the first quarter, and now we are through the halftime. So let's see. We are all good. I'm going to keep this going through halftime. Okay, thank you so much. I'm sure you've answered this question about 200,000 times, but what would you say are the biggest issues with PF2? Been running for about a year or so far. My main issue is just a lack of interesting rewards. It's kind of complicated, but my main issue with Pathfinder 2 is the math of the game creates a very balanced experience, and not a lot of the choices that you make influence that, which means ultimately a lot of the choices that you're making are sort of pyrrhic choices. You're making the decision, but all roads lead to Rome. You know, is that a way to describe it? Like, they don't want the game to get off the rails because that would mess up how the game is designed to proceed. And so everything, no matter what choices you make, everything always fits between, +2 and +1. Like it's always in this balance range. And that's, I don't know. I just don't think that is extremely interesting, for people who are interested in digging into a system and coming up with stuff. And then most of the mechanics, the other problem I have with Pathfinder 2 is they mechanize too many things, for sure. Like, look up demolition charge. That's like one of, my least favorite abilities in the game. All right, moving all the way back here. Ben says he has 5 different groups. That does help, Ben. I will admit to that. Although I guess, I don't know, maybe you're more extroverted than me. I don't know, but I think I don't know, Ben, would you say you're an extrovert, Ben, or would you say you're an introvert? That's a lot of people, even for me, to deal with. Frostjack says, draw maps, leave blanks has probably become the #1 guiding principle for me lately. It's a fantastic principle from Dungeon World, from Apocalypse World, and I think it is. I think that is great. Giving players, giving your group nothing isn't helpful. Giving them a set of concrete restrictions and roads, not helpful. But giving them some ideas and then saying, but look, there's tons of room for us to go left or go right or go straight or go up or go down or go around. Like, you need to give the group enough texture for them to be able to interact with it. But then once they're interacting with it, you need to keep your hands off and let them do the damn thing, right? Kragan, when are we going over that Sentinels of the Multiverse RPG? It's going to be sometime this month. Let's see. So today's the 12th. It'll be it's either going to be 15th or the 22nd. So that is what's happening. So it'll be in the next 2 weeks. GM Rufus says the first thing I do with a module is change the story. kind of like, well, what are we doing with the module then? But yeah, very safe and tepid. I like moral dilemmas. Yeah, dilemmas are good. Let's see here. Lance Quagmire's complaining about Super Bowl stuff. Well, okay. So here's the thing. Good movies and books are predictable. We don't want that from our RPGs. But again, I don't want, and I'll say something here, a little bit of a hot take. Like, don't be random just to be random. I know that we all love, Game Oracle, Game Master Emulator, NPC Emulator, and Tome of Adventure Design, which is, something I particularly love. But I also am okay with sometimes with, things making sense and progressing logically and, making some amount of, being able to plan for the future because that A will lead to B, will lead to C. Now, forcing the people to go A, B, C, because that's the way the story goes, I don't think that's good. But like, if I blackmail someone, I don't need to roll to always as a GM to see, well, how do they feel about that? Sometimes you can just say they're upset about that. They don't like being blackmailed. It's okay for that to be a logical conclusion from, from what someone being blackmailed is going to feel. So I don't necessarily feel like we always have to introduce, this extreme amount of randomness just because we think that is going to make it zany and fun, right? There's a line from Parks and Rec. Ron Swanson is talking to Donna Meagle, and he says, don't confuse drama with happiness. And that is also true for your D&D game, or for your RPG game, I should say. Yeah. I kind of agree with what Drekmal is saying here, right? Like, cliche is cliche for a reason, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's nice to play into expectations. One of my problems that I had with some of the, latest superhero Star Wars sci-fi stuff is they're all just like, let's subvert expectations. It's like, no, sometimes I want my expectations managed and met. I think that's okay. William Robinson says, I also think the lack of any mechanics that really tie into your character's actual personality means players typically aren't as invested in the story in Pathfinder D&D. I tend to agree. I think that what gets mechanics matters, and what matters has mechanics in an RPG. I think when you look at an RPG and you look at all of what they've written words for and what there's things to do and interact with, whether you intend to or not, that's what's going to eat up time at your table. If you want something to matter, it probably needs some mechanics. It needs to be discussed. It needs to have a way that the players are going to be able to Jenga with it, right? Flint says, so D&D is middle school, Legend of the Five Rings is high school, and Root is college. Yes, Ben is right. Versus D is like versus D is like grad school. Let's see here. Let's see. Jason says, I'm not saying I expect serious role playing or grimdark storytelling. Same. In the D&D sessions I play in, but I'm not a fan of. I don't really know what to call it, but the example is like the kidsy stuff. I think I know what you're saying, but yes, I agree. I like for there to be a nice middle ground, Jason, like that critical role character who uses lollipops as a cleric weapon. Yeah, that's a great example. I am not a fan of like, her shooting someone who shoots rainbows and unicorns in like my game. It's for like the tone. If the tone of our game is, we're playing in magical Dreamland and everybody is like, living in a world where everybody is like living embodiments of children's dreams, I'm totally fine with that. But if we're playing in a game where I'm supposed to take it as a real threat that like orcs are coming to destroy the village, or that, you know, the evil rat men are going to swarm up and kill everybody in their sleep, that creates tonal shifts for me. And I think part of the problem, Jason, there is, I think, and I'm going to, these kids get off my lawn. I think nowadays being serious is seen as like it's easier to be cynical and to make everything a joke and to not take anything seriously. Like nowadays it's lame to care. It's lame to be involved, right? It's better to be cynical, and it's better to be making a joke out of everything. And so I think part of that allure comes from like, look how cool we are. We don't take anything seriously. And that's just not who I am. I do take things seriously. Sentinels has an RPG. It does. We're going to be covering it as a first look. Frosty. Hello, everyone. Hello, Frosty. What's up? I think we're almost caught up here, maybe. Yes, Gid, I think that's a great. It is great when your players say, I totally didn't see that coming, but it makes perfect sense. That is a fan. I know that doesn't have to be every time, but when that happens, that is a great, example of what we go for. Okay, I got my little thing up here with updates. So we're through quarter one, I guess, in the last few minutes. Maybe I missed it. Of the Super Bowl. So we're going strong. We've got enough tips to take us through to halftime. So thank you again to everybody for your support. And we're gonna keep this train going. And we make our way into the next couple hours. So again, if you have to dip out, that's fine. I'll be here. If the stream dwindles to no one, I'll bust out. You know what I'll bust out? I'll bust out the whiteboard. Okay, we'll start solving some game design issues that I have with Legend of the Five Rings. I mean, we could do it all night. Let's see. Bungus is in here. I don't know the name Bungus, so welcome, Bungus. In my opinion, a lot of getting people to be invested in the story is just being very clear and frequently kind of meta. I'll often just tell players, if you do X, Y will happen, so it's an actual informed decision. Bungus, welcome to the team. That is a very Knights of Last Call philosophy. I do not like hiding information from my players. In fact, very often I will make sure that they understand the logical consequences of all of their actions. And I think that is a great idea, because I like for my players, I don't actually really care about the PCs. Those are character sheets. At the end of the day, the living, breathing human beings who are playing the game are my players. And I want to make sure that they are involved and that they are having fun and that they are making good decisions. Because even if you lose, as long as you lost because you got to make decisions, it never feels bad. I mean, it doesn't feel great, but at least it doesn't feel bad. Bungus talking about, why do I have to pick so many boring skill feats? I don't want to go into Pathfinder 2 too much, at least not right now. Maybe if the stream gets a little long in the tooth, we can start talking about problems with PF2. We could do that again. It's a big total shift, but yes, the skill feats are pretty boring. There's like 6 good general feats. We've discussed these in ad infinitum, but they are fleet, toughness, die hard, improved investiture if you can take it, canny acumen, and improved initiative. So, and guess what? You get I think you get 6 generic feats. So, or 6 general feats. So, or maybe 5. So there you go. If you're a human, those are the 6 you take. Unless you don't have the charisma to take improved investiture, then you take the 5. And this is where Gid and I disagree. Let's see. All right. D&D movies trailer played for Super Bowl. I mean, look, I'll see the D&D movie, but my expectations could not possibly be any lower. I expect it to just be a cringy fan service game, you know, attempt to sort of shove as much IP into one, you know, runtime as possible, while essentially kind of making fun of role-playing games because they think role-playing gamers will be like, oh, they're making fun of it. We know that. We can make fun of it because it's cool to make fun of ourselves. And I'm just going to be really like, you know, yeah, it's going to, I have zero hopes that it's going to be good. The best possible score I can ever imagine giving the D&D movie was like a C minus, maybe, or like a C. So, but yeah. Hey, look, we're caught up. Okay, sweet, awesome. So yeah, I got 57 people in here today. Wow, that's pretty great. Well, let's see what else. Any thoughts on what is there anything anybody would like to talk about or discuss? We just started a Legend of the Five Rings campaign, and we spent 2 sessions basically doing a session 0, more or less, but they felt like real sessions, right? Because we were just building out these really interesting, complex characters. But now already it's kind of sad and depressing, and it's kind of dramatic and sad. And I'm already sort of like, just wondering if I already went too far. One of the things I said to myself is I said, I don't want to make this campaign depressing, but we've already got a situation where like, in Legend of the Five Rings, there's 7 great clans, but 2 of the clans are Crane and Lion, and they're sort of the big players in the game. And so there's been like a rivalry between them for many, many, many hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe even going back to the beginning of the Emerald Empire. And so they're kind of like basically enemies. And in the game that we're playing, everyone is from the Lion clan, which is a very martial, warrior-oriented clan. And we just, we're building out these characters, and Aaron makes his game. And again, some of this came from some random inspiration from tables, from some background story cards. But some of it also came from taking game mechanics and, sort of converting it into a way that, made sense in the story. So Aaron's character is like 40 years old, and he went to this prestigious college, the Okoto War College, which is basically like the top tier military academy in the world. And his character now is sort of like a hermit who just makes katanas, which is considered to be a very honorable and very important thing, but it's not what would be expected of someone of his skill and talent and ability and pedigree. And again, he's been doing this for a while. So we're trying to figure out how he got to this point in the story. And his current lord or daimyo is actually his former like best friend. And they went to college together, war college together. And then they graduated, and they were, essentially were like the equivalent of being like young lieutenants. And they got engaged in this big series of wars, and they started moving up the ranks. And while this was happening, Aaron's character, who always had a love for crafting, ended up falling in love, or having an affair, I suppose you could say, with a Crane woman who was a samurai, but was an artisan. She wasn't a warrior. She was an artisan, and they bonded, or they fell in love over the beauty and the skill and in the intense spirituality of making weapons, and katana particularly, which is a sacred thing as much as it is a weapon in the world of Rokugan. Literally, it has the katana has the ceremonial trait along with the razor edge trait. So it literally has the ceremonial traits, like a mechanic in the game. Anyways, so, but of course, Crane and Lion are supposed to be enemies. And what we said is that in the game lore, when we were building these characters, we gave Aaron's character the ability to make lion pattern or lion style katanas, but we also gave him the ability to make Crane style katanas. And what we basically determined was that this woman, her fellow cranes found out that she had traded, or had given away the secrets of the crane sword casting techniques to a lion, and she was dishonored, and she was going to have to fight a duel, and it wasn't to the death, but it was a duel, and she asked Aaron's character to stand in for her in this sort of trial by combat as her champion. But like I said, his character was at the time an officer in the Lion army, and he had to choose because there was this big battle, and he either needed to go defend and be the champion of this woman from an opposite clan, or fulfill his duty and help lead his army to victory. And so he chose to help his army lead them to victory. And that victory was a massive victory, which catapulted Aaron and his best friend into, the stratospheres of glory and honor, which his best friend would take over the next 10 to 15 years to rise through the ranks to become a lord and to become a daimyo. And Aaron's character could have very easily done the same thing. But what we found out is that although it was not a duel to the death officially, his lover, his beloved, was killed in that duel. And whether it was an accident or on purpose, who can say? And instead of taking this glory and rising through the ranks, Aaron's character basically retired and became like almost like living a monastic existence, and sort of walked away, if you will, from the fight, and turned his back on all the fame and glory, which, for people of the Lion clan, anyways, it was a really interesting story. But at the end of it, Aaron was like, man, I'm so depressed. Like, my character's life is so tragic and so sad. We already we already messed up. Like, this guy is like a miserable old fuck. Like, why do we do this? Why do we always just make our characters' lives so horrible and miserable? Why can't we ever just make anything, I don't know, fun and exciting? So it's I guess it's in our nature to just make things kind of shitty and horrible. But anyways, my point is, now to be clear, we weren't just making this up to make it up. Everything I just described to you is because there are mechanics in Legend of the Five Rings. There are they're called distinctions. They're kind of like feats. There's adversities. They're kind of like flaws that go onto your character sheet. Your character has mechanical passions and mechanical anxieties. Your character has a list of what they know and what they don't know. So these are all things that are part of the character building process. They're part of the leveling up process. And the whole point of this exercise, which I was just showing you through, is this was just us explaining how those mechanics came to be. I think making up stories like that is fine, but I don't tend to do it unless it actually matters or ties into something that is in the game. Again, for me, the mechanics matter. So that is what I was trying to say with that. Let's see. Knights of the Last Call. Can you break down how binumeric dice are used in Hex? I'm still not sure I understand how they work. You mean the Hex thing? Yeah. All right. It's been a while, Ben, so you're gonna have to excuse me. Okay. You know what that means, folks. Go to the whiteboard. Okay. Okay. Boom. There it is. This thing is massive. Here we go. All right. Okay, so this is as I remember it, Ben. So please, by all means, if I don't get it right, don't don't please let me know. Okay, so what's Ben's talking about is that in a game of Hex, or which is that's the abbreviation. It's really called Jesus, my mind is completely blank. Something Expedition, Hollow Earth Expedition. God, it took me half a minute to figure that out there. Yeah, Hollow Earth Expedition, which is a game about, journeying to the center of the earth and then finding that there's dinosaurs that live there, and, very 1920s, 1930s pulp, very Mummy, the movie-esque. So as I remember it, it is a D6 pool system.
Kragan tipped $5. Well, since the whiteboard is out, we may as well get into Legend of the Five Rings stuff. That's the rules.
Kragan, that has traditionally been the rules. That is very true, but we may have to do it since we did bust out the whiteboard. So it's a D6 pool system, and I have to just remind myself here how. Let's see here. The ubiquity system, I think, is what it's called, right? Okay, yeah, so it's a binary success fail. Okay, there we go. That's what it is. Okay, so it could really actually be like a D2. So in other words, you're rolling a D6, but really it could be a D2 because all you care about is pass or fail, right? So, that's the way you kind of have to think about it. Everything is either a success or a failure. But no, not a fate dice, Bruce the Cat, because a fate dice has 2 minuses, 2 zeros, and 2 pluses. It's a little different. So these are just basically plus ones and zeros. So basically, if you roll one of these dice, okay, you're going to get a 1 or a 0. We kind of understand that. If we roll 2 of these dice, then you can get a 1-1, a 1-0, a 0-1, or a 0-0. That means that, remember, let's imagine these are D2s, right? So if something says you need to roll a D2, you would roll a D2 and you would either get a +1 or a +0. But if you needed to roll 2D2, you would get, and so this is the number of dice, you would get either a 1-1, a 0-1-0, or a 0-1, or a 0-0. But you could, so that is essentially, by the way, 2, a 1, a 1, and a 0. So you could do this with a D4, and the 4 sides of the D4 would be a 2, a 1, a 1, and a 0. So if we keep going up the scale, so let's say we had 3D2, or let's say we had 4D2. On a 4D2, we actually have, right, 8 different possible outcomes. There is a chance that we could roll 1, 1, 1, 1. And that would happen on, let's do it easier, because that's that would be a big number. Let's use 3. Okay, so for 3D2, we could roll a 1, 1, 1. The odds of us rolling a 1, 1, and a 1 on a 3D2 is 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. Okay, and that is 1/8. So that means, and by the way, we could also roll a 0, 0, 0, which would be the same thing. 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 equals 1/8. So that means if we're using a D8, it's basically what we're creating is a bell curve with the 3d2, with 0 being over here, with 3 being over here, and with 1 and 2 being right here. So what you could do instead is you could reflect this 3d2 with a single d8. You would have one side of it, which would have a, one side would be a 0, one side would be a 3, and then you would have 3 sides that are 1, and you would have 3 sides that are 2. And now you can model 3d2 by rolling one weird d8, which has these for sides, right? You have one side with a 0, one side with a 3, 3 sides with a 1, and 3 sides with a 2. You could do the same for 4d2, but then you would need a d16. And so in this way, in the game, if the game asks you to roll something like 9d2, and you're like, that's too many dice for a dice pool, you can instead roll 3d ubiquity 8, and you get the same mathematical output as you would from rolling 9 sort of binary dice. You could then instead roll the d8 and get that. So that is how that works, Ben. So hopefully that answers the question. Okay. Ben says, okay. I get it now. Thank you. So hopefully that made sense to some people. Did we lose all of our viewers as we talked about ubiquity? Yeah, we did. Oh, I love it. Let's see what else other people say here. I feel like I just went to stats class. Awesome. We love it. So let's see here. Losing views from math? Never. Yes, math is awesome. Let's see here. What we got in here? Oh, we've got, what's this? Oh, this is GNE. This is GNE. This was from the GNE score or GNS score. Does the GNS stream? Oh, we are some real nerds here, aren't we? I'm just looking at how nerdy we all are. That this is how we spend our time. Okay. So, what was I mathing? Luke, I was mathing for a system called the Ubiquity system, which is used for a game called Hollow Earth Expedition, and explaining how some of their specialized dice work. Let's see. Whiteboard math is tight. You didn't get it, Satir, but Ben got it. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about it. But you gotta go. Flint had to head out. I missed him. I'm sorry, but thank you, Flint, for showing up and dipping out there. Appreciate it. So Krogan did tip $5 and said, hey, we busted out the whiteboard. That means we got to talk about Legend of the Five Rings, right? I will say that I have this thing which I'm trying to are these dice similar to Final FFG dice where you need them or you can't play? No, Luke, because Hollow Earth Expedition is just all the dice are essentially baseline. They are coins. They're D2s. They're either pass fail. If you're using D6s, you would say 1, 2s, and 3s equal 0, 4, 5s, and 6s equal 1. Exactly, Satir. Yep. So yeah, well, okay. So one of the problems that I want to fix, if you will, for Legend of the Five Rings, is this. There's a stance. This is getting into Legend of the Five Rings. We don't need to talk about Legend of the Five Rings. I'm sorry, Kragan. It's just too much. That not enough people understand the rules for me to even actually really go into here what the problem is. But here, I'll summarize it, and then we can move on. I'm not actually going to try to do this. In Legend of the Five Rings, in an encounter mode, whether there's, I'm sorry, not encounter. That's Pathfinder 2. In a conflict scene, and by the way, Legend of the Five Rings has 4 types of conflict scenes: a skirmish, a duel, an intrigue, and a mass combat. So these rules apply if you are in a skirmish, or if you're in a duel, or if you're in intrigue, or if you're in a mass combat. Anyways, in Legend of the Five Rings, there are 5 rings, which are also your 5 stats. And one of them is the fire ring. And each ring in the game gives you a bonus when you enter it. So if your character, and you can change this, by the way, each round. So your character be in the fire stance, your character could be the earth stance, and you could change it from round to round. And in the game, you know, earth is the, you know, element in the approach of solid defensiveness, you know, stability. And fire is supposed to be the element of passion and attacking and, you know, being very overwhelming. And most people who play the game agree that its benefit, or the bonus for being in fire stance, is kind of broken. Because in Legend of the Five Rings, let me see if I can just easily do this. In Legend of the Five Rings, you roll some really strange dice. And here we go. Let me see if I have these here. Copy image. Can I bring it in? Boom. Okay. So these are the dice from the Legend of the Five Rings. And you can see there's some really weird symbols here on these dice. Okay. And the one of the symbol that we really want to pay attention to here. So this symbol here, which I'm highlighting, this symbol here is called success. It is supposed to be the Zen circle, right? Perfect circle, but incomplete. And this is what you need in order to succeed at the game. You need to get circles and add them up. Those are called successes. All right. The sort of chrysanthemum flower, the sort of opening lotus. The opening chrysanthemum flower. That's called an opportunity. But there is a symbol on these dice which is bad, and it's this symbol right here. This symbol, which is a single cherry blossom leaf, is called strife. And when you roll your dice in Legend of the Five Rings, you actually get to choose how many dice from your pool that after you've rolled that you want to keep. You don't have to keep all the dice that you roll. You can choose to keep some. But generally speaking, when you play the game, you're gonna want success symbols, and you're gonna want opportunity symbols. Okay, because that's how you do cool things in the game. But sometimes when you take those dice and you choose to take this side of the die, you're also going to be choosing this this strife symbol here. And that means that your character is going to gain a point of strife. Now, in Legend of the Five Rings, your character is a samurai. They're not just a warrior. They are also a stoic noble who is expected to maintain decorum and civility and control and composure at all times. And so in Legend of the Five Rings, each character has 2 stats. One is called their endurance, which is how much fatigue your character can endure. And then there is a stat called composure, which is how much strife your character can endure. Anyways, when strife exceeds your composure, it can be bad news. It might mean that your samurai has an emotional outburst. It might mean that your samurai does something rash or unbecoming of a samurai in a very polite and ordered society. You know, in samurai society, it would be unthinkable for you to call someone out. Like House of the Dragon, right? where they're in that scene in the throne room, and then, you know, the one guy comes forward and he just says, like, kind of says what everybody's thinking, like, oh, I think none of these kids are actually, I think all these kids are bastards, and I don't think that their dad is really their dad. I think it's the other guy. And, you know, I'm saying that, yes, I'm saying your daughter is a whore and these children are bastard, right? And it's like this shocking moment in court, and then Damon cuts his head off for being, you know, like, you know, so disrespectful, even if it was probably true. Because that is kind of a society. But take that to the next level. That's Legend of the Five Rings. So the idea is, and strife, by the way, for the samurai, it could be positive emotion. It could be negative emotion, but it could also be positive emotion. A samurai having strife could also be reflective of their character just becoming excited, happy. Like, you know, I'm legitimately stoked that, I don't know, that we're going to win. A samurai isn't supposed to have these emotional moments, especially not, you know, in court or in battle or in front of their lord where it would matter the most. All right. But so losing your composure in, say, the courtroom, or, you know, in front of your lord, it has some pretty significant consequences. The game actually has a system for, it's a number for tracking your honor, your glory, and your status. These numbers range from 1 to 100. And if you lose your composure and have an emotional outburst, say in a very inappropriate place, your character could easily lose honor or glory as the shame of what they did and the whispered rumors of your character's completely inappropriate outburst spread, which could be very detrimental to the game. Again, this is a game that cares about courtly intrigue and politics and arranging marriages. And I mean, you know, there's a strong element here of sort of nobility simulator, or at least nobility emulator. Okay, but when you are in battle, you know, losing your cool isn't as big of a deal. It's still a big deal, but it's not that big of a deal, right? You're in a combat. You're fighting for your life. It might be a big deal potentially in a duel. It might be very deadly for you. In fact, the game has rules for this. If your character loses their composure in a duel, your opponent gets to immediately strike what is called a finishing blow. Basically, in the Wild West draw, you know, the Iaijutsu, people squaring off, your character blinks, right? Your character is the first one to look away, and it triggers your opponent to make an immediate critical hit against you at double severity, which basically means you're probably dead. So losing your calm and your cool or your composure in a duel can be instantly fatal. But in some of the other conflicts, particularly skirmish, and we talked, by the way, about the danger of losing your composure in, say, an intrigue in a court setting. But losing your character's composure in skirmish or mass combat isn't as big of a deal. In fact, it's very little of a deal. So this brings us back to the fire ring. So what does the fire ring do? Well, remember, like I said, fire is about the power of passion, of creativity, of being upfront about it. And the benefit to being in the fire ring is after you've chosen all of your dice, you get +1 bonus success for each strife symbol that you took. Now, you still take the strife, okay? But as an example, if we were normally, if a character were to take, say, this die here, which I've highlighted, and this die here, which I've highlighted, you can see that those dice have 2 success circles and 2 strife symbols. So that means that our character, normally, if we were playing the game, our character would have gotten, from that roll, from those 2 highlighted rolls, they would have gotten 2 successes and 2 strife. But in the fire stance, those strifes become successes. And so this character literally gets double the number of successes. By the way, Legend of the Five Rings is a game that does not have a ton of high numbers. Like, getting 4 successes is an absolute ton. It's just an absolute ton of success. And you're literally doubling how much you're able to, to deal. Now, yes, your character's taking 2 strife, but in a battle, it doesn't really matter that much. And one of the things I'm trying to solve, Kragan, is I want to make Fire Stance still very cool and powerful and effective and fun, but I sort of want to mitigate it and not make it as just broken in, mass combat and skirmishes. And I definitely want to make it so that losing your composure and unmasking in something like a skirmish or a mass combat has a bigger effect than it does right now. And so that is one of the things that I'm trying to solve with Legend of the Five Rings. Let's see here. I'll call this my Legend of the Five Rings workbook. So this is coming in BC4. Nah, I don't think we have to worry about the Legend of the Five Rings too much in BC4, but Ben says that was boring. I apologize, Ben. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Is that because you think Legend of the Five Rings is boring? Oh, he was joking. Okay. Now, the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter. Like, so, yeah. Wait. Yeah. Okay. You had to have been joking, because we also, you were the one who asked me to describe the the binomial distribution for your D2s. Oh, cool. I didn't see it in chat, but yes, I see that you guys explained to Satir how that works. Yes, 011122233. It's on the list. Yeah, so I will say this. I think Legend of the Five Rings has a lot of promise, and I'm still totally psyched to play it. And I think the interactions that we have created through the game are incredible. But it's a little half-baked, I think, and it shows. There are some, it's one of those things where, yes, there are some, I guess I'd call them balancing issues, but I don't think it matters as much, because I don't think it's a game that's about balance, right? Like, this is a game where if the PCs were tasked by their lord, their daimyo, to go to Imperial Court because their daimyo was expecting them to, the daimyo wanted to invade a neighboring province in Crane Lands, but needed the samurai to basically get imperial permission to say that it was okay. And in the course of going to the imperial capital, the PCs may rather brusquely end up making some serious enemies in the courts, and they end up challenging a Crane courtier to a duel, and she accepts and chooses this incredible duelist master as her champion, who in like D20 terms is like a level 12 fighter, and the PCs are like level 3. And guess what? If for whatever reason they open their big mouth and it's a fight to blood or to death, those characters are just going to get destroyed. Whoever's the challenger is going to get killed or messed up, because the duelist is just that much better. That's the nature of that game. So I don't really think that is a problem as much as it is. That being said, there are some things in the game that I think are a little undercooked and a little underdeveloped. Bungus asked, can I steal mechanics from the previous editions? Bungus, no, not really. Because the first 4 editions of Legend of the Five Rings actually used a D10 system. It was called the Roll and Keep system. It used D10s. It was very different. The new version, the one from Fantasy Flight Games, now sort of owned by their Edge Studio imprint, it uses these specialized dice here that sort of how can I say it? They obviously are not D10s. And these create much more narrative-based outcomes. For anybody who is wondering, the circles represent successes so that you can actually succeed at the thing that you're trying to do. And the chrysanthemum flowers, these sort of starbursty looking things, are called opportunities, which are narrative or mechanical bonuses or buffs that you can gain that are independent of the action that you are doing. So it's a very interesting system because you can fail a roll in that you didn't get enough success symbols, the circles. But if you failed the roll because you didn't get enough success circles, it probably means that you generated a bunch of these chrysanthemum flower opportunities, and that you're going to be able to create a cool opportunity or use a cool power that might not be the straight road to victory that you were hoping to get, but it's a new opportunity or a new chance for your character to do something cool, which I think is pretty sweet, pretty awesome. Good stuff. Oh, excuse me. All right. Oh, I can't believe it. Super Bowl's almost halfway over. Kragan says, why not make them get opportunities in that stance instead of successes? That could be an interesting solution, Kragan. I don't think that is actually a horrible solution. I'm not trying to say like it would be a horrible solution, but that is definitely one that I think is possibly a reasonable option for sure. Shadram says, hi, everyone, or hey, everyone. Shadram, hello and welcome. So who do we got in here still? All right, we're still sticking at about 50. All right, well, we've talked a lot about dice systems and RPG philosophies. Is there, what are we talking about? Well, we were just talking a little bit about Legend of the Five Rings dice mechanics. And before that, we were talking about dice distribution systems. So there's all that. We've kind of been all over the place here. Yeah. Oh, I know what we could talk about here. Earlier, someone asked me, I think it might have been Pumpkin. I think Pumpkin asked me what my favorite playbook was from the Avatar Legends. No, we only got like 7 votes for drafting Pumpkin. I don't think I'm ready for that. Excuse me. So let's see here. Let me change this over. There we go. Don't know what that is, but all right. I really actually don't know what this is. This shouldn't be here, but it is. I actually don't know why that is showing up. I think my OBS there had a problem. I don't know why that is showing up there, but it definitely is. Oh, maybe I have something that is already up. I have no idea. Okay, well, it's there. Let's see here. So yeah, no, we're not drafting. You did ask that about playbooks. Draft is the worst format in Magic the Gathering. Fight me. I will fight you. Draft is incredible. It's amazing. It's a fun, evocative experience. It's tests a lot of player skill. It lets you play with cards that you would never otherwise play with in a constructed format. It really lets you get a sense for the entirety of the set's flavor and feel. It requires, it's also a great communal experience, in my opinion, far better than any Commander could ever be. Lug asked about 7th Sea, 2nd edition. I know Ben's in the chat. I got to be honest with you. I think the 7th Sea system is incredible. The John Wick, the D10s that I was talking about from Legend of the Five Rings, that's kind of a John Wick special. Hey, take care, Marvelous Mr. Mean. And the current edition, I love the idea of the raises, the rolling the dice. It's so exciting to see how many you get. The way that they, you can exchange the dice, I think is really, really great. And I'm really impressed with 7th Sea.
$10. Proof that Derek has trouble with writing. He will stream at you for hours, but a few written words for an off-seal FAQ post on the Drive Through RPG affiliate link is a tall order.
That's true. I forgot about that. Thank you. Also, part of it is, that's money, and I don't really care about the money. Yeah, we are a Drive Through RPG affiliate now, and so if you use our link, you pay the same price you would always pay at Drive Through RPG, but we get a couple of percentage points of whatever you buy. It doesn't have to be it's not even what we recommend. It could be anything you buy from the site. We get a couple of percentage points as a kickback, as a thank you for directing you to the site. So that is true. That was you. Okay. Yeah, when you give tips, people, don't forget to put your name in there. So we have the Avatar Legends role-playing game, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game. And it has playbooks, which are like classes. We can see them right here. There's 10 in the book. The Adamant, the Bold, the Guardian, the Hammer, the Icon, the Idealist, the Pillar, the Prodigy, the Rogue, and the Successor. And I honestly think that my favorite is the new one. Or is the first one, is the Adamant. So here, this is a better example of the roles here, or the playbooks. The new tip format is weird. I don't know what that means. So much better than the super boring. Is that affiliate link in a Discord channel? Golden Monkey, it's somewhere. I need to post it in like our FAQ and stuff like that and try to say, hey, if people want to use it, like they can. If they don't want to use it, like obviously that's totally fine as well. But anyways, yes, whenever I say John Wick now, it's funny because now everyone thinks Keanu Reeves. But okay, so anyways, the Adamant is a zealous advocate with a heart of gold and a diamond hard will, ready to do what it takes to fix the world. Their balance principles are restraint versus results. Oh, you're saying Stream Elements has a new format. Oh, okay. Yeah. I keep getting a notification that they updated their thing and they want me to change my display. And I'm like, no, I like the current display. I hate when people change things just to change them. Ben, people love to do that. People love to just, hey, let's just make something different just to make things different. So the deal with the Adamant and the deal with Avatar in general is this concept of your principles and your balance. Obviously, as a player, as an Avatar character, you have moves and, you can shoot lightning and, be good with weapons or martial arts or other stuff like this. But the core thing of the game is that your character is torn between these two principles. Now, for the Adamant, it is restraint versus results. For a different playbook, it might be, like, for example, if we were the Bold character, it's our loyalty versus our confidence. So each playbook kind of is dealing with this different, this different tug of war. And so what I really like about the Adamant is basically they are, kind of badass, and they are capable of getting the job done. but sometimes they leap before they look, and they can get themselves into a lot of trouble. And so they are constantly finding themselves torn between kind of going off the chain and just kicking ass and taking names and getting the job done, versus being more restrained and listening and understanding that it's not always the best thing to go in guns blazing. And I like the idea of that. I think a big part of liking an Avatar playbook is liking the principles and liking the tension between those principles. And I really, really like them. And part of the reason I really, really like that in this game is for your character, if you are your character is really, really, really good at kicking ass and taking names. But when you sort of do it, you have a chance of sort of losing your balance and kind of, I don't want to say that you lose your, lose your connection to, you don't lose control of your character, but you kind of lose control of your character. So like the Adamant has the ability to sort of basically say, I can, do what I want to do. But as a player, if an Adamant pushes themselves too far towards results, the GM basically can create a lot of problems for them. So like, let me give you a great example of this. Like, let's say that, the bandits that you've been sort of trying to capture, they're in the town, you spring the ambush, but they're getting away. And, in the midst of all the confusion, you see the bandit chieftain who's sort of behind all of this, and he's getting away. And, but the town is in trouble, and other people, all the fellow party members are like, hey, we have to go help. The town is, on fire or whatever like that. And your Adamant, who maybe is a firebender, says like, no, I am going to stop this guy. And so like your character rushes forward, and you basically are telling the GM, I want to get results here, and I kind of don't care what the consequences are going to be. And this playbook empowers you to basically get the result where the bandit chieftain is captured, but your character creates this, massive gout of this wall of flame to trap the bandit chieftain. And it does. The bandit chieftain is caught and imprisoned or whatever. But like, you start a massive fire in the town, and a bunch of people's homes burn. And of course, depending on the tone of your game, if it's a little bit more PG, people get their homes burned and things destroyed, but no one dies. If you're playing a more adult and graphic game, then yeah, maybe, maybe some people die because of your harsh and rash actions. So the Adamant has this sort of like ability to just be this kind of nuclear option. And I think it's tempting as a player in an RPG to know that you have this kind of power up your sleeve, and you could let it go at any time. But if you do, there may be or will be some serious consequences, and having to make that decision and what could go wrong and what will go wrong. And as an Adamant, you have this, this person, this lodestar, who you let get past your emotional walls, and they're a character that's really, really good. It ideally should be a PC. Instead, I think, yeah, they say name your lodestar, and you should choose a fellow PC to start off with. But the idea being that, like, yes, your character can find restraint, and your character can push themselves towards control. But in a way, you start to lose your ability to get things done. And, you've gained that measure of self-control, but then you kind of lose that ability to make real change and to make things happen. And so how do you, how do you balance between that? It's almost like the classic superhero dilemma, right? Of like the superhero who thinks, I do more harm than good, and they retire the cape, they hang up the mask, and, they then suddenly things start getting bad. And they realize, like, man, am I going to have to unlock this power within me in order to, go and do it, something something that potentially could be disastrous for everybody else, but the world needs me, and my feelings aren't as important as getting the job done. And people might get hurt, but doing nothing is the worst of the two crimes. So I don't know. I think it's a very, very interesting, it's a very interesting playbook. And I think it's got some interesting mechanical interlock with it. Let's see some question here. Shadram, hanging out in New Zealand. Stay safe, my friend. Just waiting for the cyclone to knock my power out so I can stop working and go read my Versus D book instead. Satir says, a bit like Aang trying to learn firebending with Zuko. He was unbalanced to restraint. Well, Satir, the way that this game is structured, each playbook has its own set of principles that they're dealing with. So like the Adamant deals with those two. The Bold deals with loyalty versus confidence. In Pathfinder, in the terms of the show, Aang would have been is it the Icon? Yes, I think it's the Icon. Let me see if this is right. Yes. Aang is an Icon. So the Icon comes from an ancient tradition and inherits some serious standards to live up to. And their principles are between their role and their freedom. So, the Icon is expected to be this, great leader, or this future avatar, or you're supposed to be the next queen, right? But you want freedom, and you want to be able to make your own choices, but then you're, definitely, not living up to the roles and responsibilities, and maybe other people rely on you and need you. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yes, just that part is the Adamant. Yeah, I mean, totally. Totally. Yes, best name I can think of. The archetypes are not element specific. Yeah, they are all completely independent of anything that you're doing. All of these playbooks could be earthbending, waterbending, firebending, airbending, weapon mastery, or technology or technological advancement or whatever like that. You could basically be any of those 6 things, which is called your background or something like that. But that doesn't change any of these moves. The game is really not focused on bending. Bend it like Korra. So that's a great question. I'll put this in the poll. I don't know if anybody watched it, but I'll put an option for that. When it comes to Avatar, which did you prefer? Did you prefer Avatar: The Last Airbender? Did you prefer Avatar: The Legend of Korra? Or never watched it? I'm curious. I feel like I know how this is going to end up, but anyways, yeah, it's a very compelling system, just because it's really about, there's a lot of interpersonal. I'll say this: there's a lot of things in this game where you're going to be making checks against other people in the party. In fact, there's like whole moves that are designed for, helping and aiding and assisting the group and helping another party member. And sometimes there are negative things in the game. Like, let me show you something here. Let's see here. Like if I go to the core moves, where are they here? Basic moves. 129. Okay, so in this game, this move right here, which is called Guide and Comfort, is basically your basic healing move. And you're going to generally do this on an NPC, or I'm sorry, on a fellow PC, but you could also do it on a fellow NPC, or you could do it on an NPC. And it says, when you try to honestly guide and comfort another person, you roll with your harmony stat, and on a hit, you choose one. So if you get a high enough value, they get to choose, like if I'm trying to help somebody, a fellow PC, they can embrace my guidance and comfort, and they get to basically heal themselves. They get to get rid of a negative condition. They get to get rid of fatigue. But you have to ask them what you may ask them one question, and they must answer it honestly. But the PC might not choose to let you do that. They might instead shut you down and inflict a condition on you in response. And that is totally acceptable. This would be like the equivalent of, in D&D, you're damaged and the cleric comes over to you and says, here, let me help. Let me heal you. And your PC says, no, get away from me. I don't want your healing. I don't need your healing. I'm fine. It kind of blows the mind to think of a world where we're doing this, because we're used to thinking about it in terms of, battling monsters and traps and hit points and all this other stuff. But in this game, you may not want, if you accept and they ask you a question, you have to answer it, and you have to answer it honestly. And you may not want to do that. You may not want to let them in. Right. And so I think like this is a great example of the kind of gameplay that you would get out of Avatar. Ben, I mean, let's be honest with this. All good games would, right? I mean, like, that's just, again, I know I'm being biased here, but like, and listen, I've played Fantasy 20 games my whole life, and I will play Fantasy 20 games in the future. There's going to be future PF2 games that I'm going to run. There's going to be probably some basic games that I'm going to run, maybe even some D&D 6th edition games in the future. But I honestly just don't feel like these games, they are what they are, and they're never going to be the kind of complex, emotional, dramatic, tension-filled game that I want them to be. Not because it's their own fault or because the game is fundamentally flawed. They're just not designed for that. You can only put so many rules into a game. I mean, look at something like PF2. I heard somebody mention that they got their hardback finally, and it is a big chonkin' book. And it is a big chonkin' book. You want to add more rules to that book already? It's like, that's crazy. All right. So overwhelmingly, everybody said Avatar: The Last Airbender, and instead of Avatar: Legend of Korra, and only a small percent of you have never actually seen it, and I pretty much what I expected. Here's the thing about Korra, it is good. I just think that part of the thing with Avatar: The Last Airbender is the journey of Aang is so much more relatable, because he's starting from, I don't know what's going on. I've been in the ice for 100 years. I'm a little kid. I have to go on my hero's journey. I'm learning about the world the same time the audience is learning about the world. I think you just progress with the character so much, more easy than you do with Korra, who comes in and, also Aang's, super, the show starts off with a very light tone in Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's very much more aimed at obviously younger kids. And Legend of Korra kind of comes in. She's a little bit more rough around the edges, a little bit more, angst to her character. She's not necessarily as immediately likable. So I think that's where Legend of Korra struggles. And then Avatar: The Last Airbender had 3 seasons, and they all naturally build upon one another, right? Book 1, he has to learn how to waterbend and deal with the waterbenders. Book 2, he has to learn how to earthbend, and he has to deal with what's going on in the Earth Kingdom. It's like his grand tour of the world. And then book 3, he has to learn firebending, and Zuko comes in, and then he has to fight the Fire Lord, which has just been from episode 1, season 1. That's the progression. Got to fight the Fire Lord. Got to fight the Fire Lord. Got to fight the Fire Lord. I don't want to say it's basic storytelling, but it's basic storytelling. Avatar: Legend of Korra is much more complex. The villains are much more complex. Ozai was evil with a capital E. He was the bad guy. He didn't have the redeeming qualities. He was just a jerk. He wanted to kill things. He wanted to destroy everything. He wanted to be the ruler of everything. He wanted to be the Phoenix King. I rule over everything, right? There was no subtlety there. Whereas, Zahir or, Kuvira from Legend of Korra were much more nuanced characters. They weren't just easy cut and paste kid villains. They had motives and reasons, and maybe you kind of agree with them a little bit, and maybe they're making some degree of sense. And so I do think it's a more complex show. And while I also prefer Avatar: The Last Airbender, I have to say that probably Legend of Korra is ultimately a better written show, or at least it's a better there's more interesting character development and character arcs. A lot of characters in Avatar: The Last Airbender really don't change or grow that much. Really it's kind of Zuko. Katara kind of is Katara the whole show. Sokka is kind of Sokka the whole show. I mean, they have their moments. I'm not trying to say that they don't make any progression around their arc, but for the most part, the show is the most interesting character in the entire show is Zuko. So, who is not the protagonist, right? He's the what's the word? There's a fancy literary word for it. The duo, the I don't remember the word is. Ben probably knows it, but it's like where you're like the bad guy protagonist. I don't know exactly what it's called, but let's see. Have you ever tried Cypher System or Shadow of the Demon Lord? I have. I own Numenera from the first Kickstarter, and I own Shadow of the Demon Lord. No, the antagonist is the person who fights against the main character. Let's see. I'm going to look it up here in Google. Protagonist. Protagonist. Is that what it is? No. What is it? It's like the villain protagonist. I don't know if there's a term for it, but anyways. Protagonist. That reminds me of Red Letter Media. The protagonist. I don't know if anybody ever saw that, but Sokka, listen, Sokka, they all did a little bit, right? Sokka grew up, became responsible, started taking things more seriously, but it was still kind of a kid's show at the end of the day. So Bungus Bill, I think, makes a great point about, this is a great point about the game in general, which is, I think a problem for Korra with me is a lot of the villains are intended to be deep, interesting, but just aren't. And that's because I think Bungus, I think you're absolutely right, is because Legend of Korra wasn't about the villain, right? I suppose it depends on what you want to say about storytelling and how you think storytelling should be sort of used or utilized. But think about Avatar: The Last Airbender and the final fight versus Ozai. It was a joke. Aang could have won at will at any time. Early in the fight, Ozai lightning bolts at him. He doesn't know that Aang can do the lightning bolt redirection, and Aang has him dead to rights. He could kill him right there. Aang chooses not to because Aang cannot bring himself to kill anyone, even the Fire Lord. And then at the end of the fight, when he realizes he cannot kill him, he, is going to lose because it's like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to fight back. And then when he enters the Avatar state, he kicks the guy's ass. It's not even close. It's a joke. He starts kind of almost like Neo at the end of the first Matrix movie. It's a joke. He just destroys him. He just manhandles him. And Ozai is the complete most uninteresting villain of all time. I just think Avatar: The Last Airbender is saved as a show because of Zuko and Iroh. I think without the Zuko Iroh angle, the whole show falls apart. Lug, yes. Deuteragonist. That is exactly the word I was looking for. Or Deuteragonist. That is 100% the word I was definitely looking for. So anyways, I do think that there were some misses in Legend of Korra. I don't think it's perfect by any means. I'm just saying, I think a lot of the strength of Avatar: The Last Airbender comes from Zuko, and specifically the Zuko-Iroh connection, and his growth in the show is why people like that show. Even if you don't understand that's the reason why you like the show, it's probably the reason that you like the show. Yeah. You know, interestingly today, I did an interview. This is what I was thinking. So the thing about a game like the Avatar, this is kind of weird, but like, I kind of want to run it, but I kind of want to run it play by post. Play by post has become kind of popular on our Patreon Discord, and people are, you know, they're doing their whatchamacallit, campaigns. We've got a couple campaigns going on in our forums that are play by post, and part of me thinks that like a game like Avatar with this kind of like in-depth character chewing moments could be potentially really well handled by play by post. But what's interesting for all the Galarian in-depths out there and the London Matthews and stuff like that, I did an interview today for TPK-Con, which is next weekend, President's Day weekend, and I interviewed a gentleman who has a small Patreon, and he likes to do play by post on Discord, and he built a bot which is designed to help people play games. It's system neutral, but it is definitely aimed towards D20. And I told him, I said, you might need to change that. But it's a design to help you manage and run play by post games, especially specifically Fantasy 20, Pathfinder 2 games in your Discord bot. And I thought it was so cool and interesting that it's so funny because this has just been such a big thing going on in our channel recently. And, you know, it's maybe worth interesting and taking out. Let's see what's going on with, I had the Puppy Bowl loaded up and it looks like Disney blocked it. Those sons of bitches. Damn it. How does play by post not fall apart like most people trying D23? I mean, you know, you got to stay. You are right. People do have to stay interested. I mean, I've been so far behind on D23. I have every 100% intention of getting it done. My problem is I want to sit down and I want to make like 4 or 5 or 6 rooms, 7 rooms. I'm not going to try to like 100% catch up, but I want to do like 4 or 5 or 6 rooms in order. And kind of get to a good point where it's like, okay, I'm back to like basically end of January, and then I'll only be like a week or 2 weeks behind in terms of February progression. But how does it not fall apart? I mean, the same way as anyway. People just stay interested. They stay engaged. If anything, I think play by post is probably easier than probably most people. I've stopped D23 for good. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Satir, like, I think it's an interesting exercise, and I still 100% think I support people who want to do it. And I've told myself I'm going to do it at least through the first quarter, and I want to make at least 3 levels. I told myself if I end up stopping after a few months, that's okay. I'm under no pressure or obligation to do it, but I still think it's interesting. That being said, Satir, I think the OGL debacle took a lot of the wind out of the sails of folks. I think a lot of people were really excited, and it was a fun thing to be really positive about building dungeons and being interested in dungeons again. And I love that, you know. And then all of a sudden, all anybody could talk about was like how much they fucking hated Wizards of the Coast and all that other stuff. And I think it just made people get real cynical and bitter. And, you know, I already see this. Look at this shit here. I mean, let me go over to Reddit. I saw this on Twitter as well, but like, I mean, I'm assuming you guys saw this. Tip info. What is this? Go. Sorry about that. right? So I'm sure you guys saw this here where, hey all, been seeing a rise in harshness against players asking about homebrew rules. While I recommend doing vanilla Pathfinder 2nd edition to everyone first, let's not forget the first rule of Pathfinder, which is be respectful of new players. Remember, you were once in their shoes. So basically, as I understand it, toxic D20 fandom is going to toxic D20 fandom. And there's a bunch of people who are coming over to Pathfinder 2, and they're excited to play, and they're excited to be part of the Pathfinder 2 ecosystem. And they're coming in with their, with their ideas from 5th edition, and all the Pathfinder 2 people were so excited because, like, ooh, look at this. We're gonna, I don't know what. You would think that these people in Pathfinder 2 like work for Paizo or something like that. Like, it's almost like again, I don't understand tribalism. I never understood, like, people talk about, like, oh, my team, my team. It's like, do you work for the Philadelphia Eagles? Do you, if they win the Super Bowl, do you make money or something? Do I not know about this? Like, are you involved with the management decisions in this game? So, like, I never understood, like, why all these people were, like, so gung-ho about, like, yeah, come to our game. It's like, do you need that much validation in your life in order to feel like you've made the right choice? Is that what this is all about? Is this all about, like, you feel like deep down inside you were never secure in your decision to play Pathfinder 2 instead of 5th edition, and maybe you felt like you were stupid or silly, and now that people want to come play your game, it suddenly makes you feel smug and superior? I basically hate people, but, like, that is the only thing that I can figure out that people were reacting to. And so anyways, like, this this post came out, and I mean, even before this post came out from the mods, like, I've been seeing just a lot of people shitting down people because a bunch of people are coming to play the game. And up until this point, everybody said, like, oh, sorry, don't make me tap the sign. But then this person, and then this is from the rule book, by the way, which is and people love to, like, be like, oh, the game is yours. Use it to tell the stories you want to tell. Be the character you want to be. Share exciting adventures with your friends. If any other rule gets in the way of your fun, as long as the group agrees, alter it or ignore it to fit your story. Boom. Right. And it's like, okay, well, which is it, Pathfinder 2 people? Are you respectful of everybody's decisions to make whatever they want? It's like, no. So now the 5th edition people are coming in, and they're asking questions, and they want to change things. And the Pathfinder 2 people are like, the viral meme of the girl freaking out because the person keeps putting the shapes into the square hole or the circle or whatever, because they all fit, because you can just turn them sideways. And so suddenly it's like, I don't understand what I don't know what people expected or wanted. Because, like, here's the thing. A lot of people are like, well, you should play Pathfinder 2 fine, you should play it by itself, and before you start hacking it. And you know what? Listen, that's probably true for, like, I don't know, publishing something or sharing something. But if you're just playing with you and your group, and you've been playing RPGs for a long time, and you come to a new system and you say, oh, this has a rule. I understand how role-playing games work. I'm not an idiot. I don't like that rule. I'm going to change that rule. It's like, yeah, that's totally fine. So then they come onto this Pathfinder 2 subreddit where everybody's welcoming everybody in, and then they ask a question because they're like, hey, look, I'm thinking about changing this rule. And they're getting all this pushback. We had a new person on our Patreon who said, like, he asked a question and we gave him some responses, and I don't exactly remember what he said. I wish I would have saved it, but he said, hey, thanks so much for answering my question. Also, thank you for, like, not belittling me or shitting on me, because I've been in a lot of other Pathfinder 2 discords, and I'm, kind of new, and I've come from 5th edition, and I just keep getting so many people telling me that my questions are stupid, my ideas are wrong. It's like this cult of the raw is so crazy in Pathfinder 2, because people do not want to be told that the game has flaws, or that the game isn't perfect for every person that plays it. And it's so crazy to me. And so now it's like, it's just, I don't know. It's just really funny to me. Because all these Pathfinder 2 people were so happy that, you know, like, they're like, we won, which is like super toxic to even think about. Right. And like, they're like, we won. Haha. All these people are coming in here. And then it's like, then they start coming in. New people from the outside, new people with their own ideas about how the game might be changed, how the game might be different, how the game might work better for them. And suddenly these people were persona non grata. Suddenly nobody wanted to deal with them anymore because, you know, they're like, well, maybe you should just hold that up there and, don't mess with that, right? Because, you know, the game is fine. I mean, the game is perfect. You really shouldn't have to change it. And like a lot of people who are coming from Pathfinder 2 are like, no, you don't have to change anything. The game is just perfect the way it works. You don't have to change anything. So they think typos are 4D chess future proofing. Exactly, Damien. I mean, again, this is a community which I remember very clearly, the parry trait for weapons, which in the book used to say, it's as an interact action on your turn, obviously, you can spend an action with the interact trait, and the parry weapon will give you +1 circumstance bonus to your armor class until the start of your next turn. So basically, a parry weapon could be used like a light shield. But you didn't have to have a shield, right? You could have 2 weapons, or you could have a weapon and something else, but you didn't have to have a shield. And people said, oh, well, but it has the interact trait. It's very specific about that. That would trigger a reaction, like an attack of opportunity. And that's obviously stupid. How could raising your weapon to parry make you open to offense? Obviously, this was a typo, or they didn't understand something. And I remember there were literally dozens of people brigaded in the Paizo forums and stuff, and Reddit, mostly the forums, defending this and saying, no, this was intentional. Think about it. Like, and these are people, by the way, who've probably never been in a fight their whole life, let alone held any sort of medieval weapon. Not like I'm some sort of expert, but they're trying to explain why this makes sense. Not only does that not make sense, but it's also a horrible game mechanic. So not only is it wrong from a simulationist standpoint, it's just a horrible game mechanic. So why would anyone in their right mind ever want that to be the rule ever? It's stupid. But I remember there were people legitimately defending this and thinking that this was 100% fine and there was no problems with it, whatsoever. And yet, here we are. There have been people who are saying like the Chirurgeon was totally fine. It didn't need anything. And then Paizo had to come in and update the hell out of the subclass because it basically didn't work. It wasn't functional. It's still not even that great, as from my understanding of someone who did the math, but at least they did something to it. But it was fine before that, right? So yeah. Anyways, I don't know how we got off on this topic. PF2 Reddit. Don't hack PF2. Knights the Last Card Discord. So you want to start playing PF2 by hacking it. Here's the best way to hack it. I mean, listen. The Patreon has its own. The Patreon has its own annoyance issues with me sometimes. My annoyance with people in hacking Pathfinder 2 is they always basically say the same thing. They say, I want to do something that is, awesome and incredible and whatever. And they go, but I want the tactical combat. I don't know what people's obsession is with they want Blades in the Dark, or they want Powered by the Apocalypse, or they want something, but they want that tactical combat. People love the tactical combat, which I guess is great. I don't know. Maybe I've just played too many war games in my life, but I don't have that same thirst for tactical combat that my fellow Knights of the Last Call community members who play Pathfinder 2 seem to love and adore and share, because I just don't have it. Yeah. Anyways, I'm so freaking tired of battle mat requiring tactical combat. Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at too. But I mean, I guess, you know what? Listen, I play it on a grid for many years. You know, who am I to say that we shouldn't do something else, right? All right. Well, it's halftime. I'm gonna crack this beer. We didn't quite get there, but we're hot. We're close. This is the last of the beer that we got from our friend Ryan Oxley out of Nashville. So, with the Dos Perros, two dogs. Pretty cool. Good. I didn't crack it. Matt used to crack it. Cheers, everybody. So. There we go. All right. I don't know when the halftime show is over, but if you guys want me to keep going into quarter three, we'll need 30 more bucks. And again, listen, this is your time, folks. If you want me to talk about something, please let me talk about something. I understand this is a long show. I'm kind of doing this as halftime is over. Damn it. All right. Well, get in quick. You're in bonus time. And we are $20 into the next 50. Okay. Quarter three just started. Okay. So keep it going. Otherwise, we'll probably wrap up then at the end of Q3. Quarter three. The third quarter. This is how bad I am with football. I'm calling it like Q3. Or not, or I can get my Sunday night back. Like, it's all good for me. And again, if there are things that you want me to talk about or discuss, please feel free to ask me a question. If it's a super chat or a tip, I will almost certainly at least get into it and dig into it a little bit. Pumpkin, of course, is drafting like Magic the Gathering, Pathfinder 2 character abilities. Honestly, Pumpkin, it seems really cool, but I don't know. I don't know about that process, but at least it sounds interesting. I mean, I'll give you that credit. It's already 3/4 of fiscal year 23. Yes, exactly. Derek, speaking of the game, have you ever seen any Australian football? Is that soccer? In which case, also no. But if it's football that isn't American football, then no, I have not seen that. I think I've seen rugby played once, but I didn't understand what was going on, so it made it kind of not as interesting. I've been enjoying Starforged co-op with my brother. Very fun game. My problem with Starforged is everything started to like there's a lot of narrative structure, but underneath the scene, everything was just another progress track and we're making progress on it. And then it was another progress track and we're making progress on it. Like it was like progress tracks with this progress tracks and a sub progress track to this progress track. The game got to be too similar to itself. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like I just felt a little frustrated with it didn't feel like there was a lot of ways to interact with the tracks other than to attempt to make progress on them. And if you fail, pay the iron price. So like, again, I'm sure other people's mileage may vary. I don't know, who's logged off or logged on, but I know we have some people who have a lot more experience with Starforged and Iron Sworn, but we could talk about it. 1 or 2 seeds a week. Yeah, that could totally be the case. And again, I think as like more of if we think about that game as more of a collaborative storytelling system than a game, then I think that starts to make it a little bit more appealing, more like a tool to sort of collaboratively author, like as if you were writing a book. And some books have multiple authors, like 2 authors. And so if we start to think about the game as a framework for collaborative storytelling instead of like a game, then maybe that makes it a little bit easier in my brain. I don't know. AFL is a different game to soccer or rugby. Well, I have not seen it then. Frostjack. Brutus says it comes in moods for me. Like, I like the tactical combat at time, but at the other times I'm in the hardcore screw balance, screw mechanics. Let's basically sit around and tell a story. Right, which is totally fine. The problem is that I like the what's going on here? Here's my window. There we go. I like the process of geez, it takes so long to get everything resized these days. I like mechanics and I like tactical combat. The problem is that, like, I kind of get into like this weird loop and I don't know how to fix it. And maybe there is a way to fix it, but I don't know exactly how to fix it, which is, okay, so combat is sort of like the de facto default way that we, struggle in most fantasy TTRPGs. It's certainly like, when all else fails, you can turn to the blade. And of course, there's some RPGs where we turn to the blade, more often than not. And realistically, in most Fantasy 20 games, the only outcome of a combat is you survive, you get hurt, or you die, right? And I understand that there are different outcomes, but let's be real with ourselves. This is 99% of the time. So that means that in order for this game to be interesting, for this combat to have real stakes, we need to assign a % chance to these three things. And these are baseline statistics, okay? But we have a problem, which is if this percentage is too high, if the death percentage is too high, then, we're going to die a lot. Okay. Like, and if we die a lot, that creates a lot of problems for games. And I again, I appreciate the idea of the meat grinder, whatever mindset of old school D&D, but I honestly don't think it really worked out that well. Gid says there's no victory chance of this. Yeah, I'm assuming. Okay, yes. So this is victory, Gid. I'm assuming that if you survived or you ended up hurt, it's because they're all dead now, and you either, I should say, maybe, you know what? Let me do this. How about this? We'll say this. We'll just say you're unhurt. You're basically just fine, right? So now here's the thing. I've played a lot of combat games. I've played Warhammer. I've played War Machine. I've played Warhammer 40K. I've played, what's it called? Frosthaven. What's the name of that damn game? I don't even remember what it's called, but I've played a lot of these combat games, miniature games. I used to play the D&D minis game, which was actually a real game. Like, and here's the thing. These were, competitive. Like, I have my team and you have your team and we are competing. but I'm competing against another player in a fair tournament. And obviously there are, rules and builds, and, at any one given time, there might be some army list or some, group that is more powerful than another one. So you might say, oh, right now the dwarves, they just got a new book out and some of their new units are busted or whatever like that. But for the most part, you are going into a game with a 50% chance of victory and a 50% chance of not victory, which means death. And that's the baseline assumption. You're going in playing 50-50. And that's what makes these games really interesting, because what is going to make the difference is going to be obviously my play and skill. But unlike a game of chess, no matter how much I do, like, let's say I make some really great decisions, I make some really smart choices. I might be able to get that as high as, 70%. That would be a lot, by the way. And this makes this a ton of fun. But when we go back to our Fantasy 20 game, right? But here's the beauty. If I lose, even I could be in a tournament. I could be in a Warhammer tournament. And if my army gets wiped out to a man or to a dwarf in round 1, I just come back in round 2 and I just play with my army again, right? I can have this intense chance of losing, which makes for a good game, because there aren't really consequences for death. I lost the game, right? And but I get to keep playing. I get to keep playing the game. When you are playing a TTRPG, whether it's because making a character is a huge pain in the ass and requires a lot of time and effort, or because you and your friends are really interested and invested in the characters and in their, their narrative arcs, and you just don't want to see them just get killed willy-nilly. In a classic Fantasy 20 game, you can only put, if you put a 5% chance here, that is really high. So in most Fantasy 20 games, I think that this 5% chance is even lower of death. It is something more like a 2%, maybe 1%, 2%, 3%. I mean, maybe if you're using like more severe encounters or stuff like that, that number might be higher. But honestly, I mean, we're talking the 2% to 5% range. Now, if it is higher than the 2% to 5% range, you're in trouble, because your characters are going to die a lot, just straight up. And I know what people are saying, and this is kind of like the weird thing, a realization that Smith and I had the other day, is a lot of people will point out, they'll point out to like the old school philosophy. Okay. And they'll point out the combat as war. And they'll talk about how, like, in an old school game, you might start off with a 50-50 chance of life or death, right? I think we can all agree to that. I don't know if it's exactly 50-50, but, I don't know, maybe it's 60-40, live, die, right? But it's not great odds. And people go, yeah. And they're like, oh, you're going to die all the time. And players go, no, that's because you gotta think outside the box. You gotta be smart. You gotta do a bunch of stuff. Now, part of the problem with that is twofold. One, it's a bunch of untrained military people talking to an untrained military DM, coming up with plans and ideas. And quite frankly, none of us know what the hell we're talking about. We like to think that we are creating some sort of ultimate kill zone. But in reality, it might just be a horrible idea if you ever tried to do it. One of the funniest things I've ever seen in my whole life is, watching people who played a lot of role-playing games, go and do like a LARP for the first time, but like a real like HEMA, like historical European martial arts, and just getting annihilated instantly, like the first time they try to do something, because none of those stupid D&D shit works in real fighting. Nobody's cutting people's heads off and stabbing them through the chest. I mean, it might happen occasionally, but a lot of times it's like you cut someone on the wrist with your blade during a clash, and now they're gonna bleed to death, or they can't use their arm anymore, and so they're basically helpless to after one slash across their arm. Anyways, but what a lot of people will point to is like, using your tactics and your strategies. But all you're really doing then is pushing this to like 95.5. Now, yes, I understand there's a difference between this 95.5, okay, and this 95.5. This 95.5, the players had to like engage and they had to do something, which is fair. Here, the game is sort of set up default to give you this 95.5. But from a game perspective, from a, like a repeatability perspective, like when I play one of these games over here, I can build my army and I can make good choices and I can bring all of my stuff to the forefront, but I will never be able to get to anything close to a 95.5 split. The best I'll probably be able to move is to take a 50-50 and, maybe change it to like a 65-35. Again, some of the best Magic the Gathering players in the entire world have things like, Lifetime, have like game win percentages of like, 58%. So, like it's, that the difference between a coin flip and the best Magic the Gathering players in the world is 8%. And that's after a lifetime of playing, because variance is a real pain in the ass. But the truth about RPGs is if losing equals death, or even death spiral, then even having something like a 5% chance to die or essentially become so injured that you can no longer proceed, if it's 5% or 10%, like the odds that you make it through even 10 fights, which is pretty typical for a fantasy 20 game to get to the next level, are less than 50%. Like it's just not tenable. But the problem is, despite how low they make it, people still do die in Pathfinder 2. So they made it really rare, but it still happens and it sucks. But they made it so low that it's still super easy. So it's like you're kind of getting the worst of both worlds here, right? You're like, okay, let me get this straight. The combats aren't designed to be legitimately tactically challenging. Because again, what I'm trying to get to is here, people always bring up the tactical miniature combat experience of Pathfinder 2, but it's not. It's a exceedingly lopsided, horribly unbalanced game, massively in your favor. And you're like, okay, well, that may be the case, but like, at least the game is set up in a way that we at least can't die. Well, no, but you can still die too from absurd variance. So it's like, you're not even getting the protection of that. Now, Gid is right. I don't think losing means death, but most of the time death means losing. That is true, Galarian in depth. The problem is, and you know this well, so don't even say that you don't. These games are not designed to support that kind of playstyle. They're just not. The game does not have the means to promote that type of thing. It just doesn't exist. Also, in Pathfinder 2, they basically have said that if you end the fight and, maybe there was a 20% chance of ending the fight unhurt, and there was a 75% chance of ending the fight hurt, in 3rd edition, you could use Cure Light Wounds, wands, and in 4th edition, you could use Healing Surges, and 5th edition, you could use Hit Dice. In Pathfinder 2, you can use Treat Wounds. You basically can just turn hurt into unhurt, for very little cost. So the consequences that come out of a combat are almost meaningless. And I know what people are going to say. Oh, well, you could, losing means death. It doesn't have to be. Correct. But the problem is it's still extremely disruptive. It's still extremely problematic, because if losing doesn't mean death, it's still very much a problem and disruptive to your characters and to your players and to your game. And you're still then playing a really lame tactical game where 95% of the time you win. So I'll say this: if losing doesn't mean death, let's say losing means something else. Okay, so let's say we do that. Losing no longer equals death, or at least most of the time. So then doesn't that mean that we can push our game to be more like, maybe it doesn't have to be a 50-50 game of life or death, but now our game can at least be, 70-30, 80-20. Can't we at least make the game more tactically interesting, where our choices actually make a huge difference and can mean the difference? Because now we've removed that from the game. So now that frees us up to have a more interesting tactical game. I think what I'm trying to say is I find the tactical game of Pathfinder 2 to be uninteresting, because the game is designed so that I can win. What is the fun of trying to play and win at a game that is stacked in my favor? I don't fully understand. It's like, I think there was a Twilight Zone episode, could be Twilight Zone, where like maybe it's a gambler. He dies and he's up in the afterlife in heaven, and it's like, I think it's like every time he gambles, he wins. He thinks it's heaven, and he realizes by the end of the episode that he's actually in hell, because by making it so that he always wins and never has any consequences, they've actually took away the fun and the joy of gambling from him. So that's why it's hell. And so I think part of my problem with the tactical mini game of Pathfinder 2 is it just doesn't really feel like it's a worthwhile endeavor for me, because look, I'm going to win, either. I'm going to win either way. And then if I do lose, in a way, death is like the easiest consequence, right? Because that's it. It's over. You're dead. Now you could say, okay, well, you lose, but what happens to you? Okay, well, for starters, if I go unconscious, I don't die. Or you make it so that I can't die. But if the other party members lived, then they're going to bring me back up, right? So the only way then that you can have a consequence is what? If every single person dies or gets taken out. And then what are you going to do? Like, just have the enemies literally capturing the party members like every, couple of sessions? And then what? Keeping them prisoner, and then they're going to escape? Like, is your campaign just going to become a never-ending, line of prison escapes? I don't know where this rant is going. I'm simply just saying, I don't think it's a useful thing to try to design for. That's all I'm trying. It is if you're making one of these games, but if you're not making one of these games, I don't get the point. I like these. All right, we got some quotes here from the Peanut Gallery. To quote What Dreams May Come, sometimes when you win, you lose, and sometimes when you lose, you win. Yes, but again, I don't think Pathfinder 2 particularly handles that well. Wouldn't you agree? To quote Rush, sometimes the angels punish us by answering our prayers. Yes, that's a great quote. And Ben, to quote Watsy, I think we all won here. We all won, Ben. And to quote Pathfinder, the Leshy attacks immediately and fights to the death. Quite right. And that's the truest lesson we can learn from here is everything should just fight immediately, attack immediately, and fight to the death, because, why bother? And so, and I see all the time in our Discord and stuff, people try to make, try they try to make Pathfinder 2. They say, oh, okay, we'll throw severes at the party. We'll throw extremes at the party. And it's like, okay, so in your mind, what you are trying to do is you are trying to push that 95-5 win-loss or live-die ratio by using harder monsters with higher stats. You're trying to push it to what? 75-25? Okay, great. You did that. So now what? Right? So now what? What happens now? Congrats. You've made it a coin flip. What is that actually doing for you? Like, that's what I don't understand. Basically, it's like, are you trying to make the game into a tactical miniatures combat game? Oh, you are. Okay. Well, you understand that in those tactical miniature combat games, half the time, all your minis are dead or routed or killed, or, like, you've lost utterly and the game is over and that's it. And the curtain ends and your opponent won and you owe him a beer because he won. That's, me and my buddy used to play Warhammer. Whoever won had to buy the other guy a beer, or whoever lost, I should say, had to buy the other guy beer, because we would always go out for a beer or two after our Warhammer games. So that was what was on the line. But that's because complete death was acceptability. So if you're pushing towards something away from 95-5, towards 75-25, or towards 50-50, but you're trying to make your game into this, but if you don't include some sort of other way to handle loss that isn't going to get stale and lame and feel completely cringy and hacked on and tacked on, then you're going to have this problem. And, that is the case. Some of us won with a fourth degree of success. Add unsuccess conditions to the track. I don't think I know what London and Ben are talking about. Maybe there was something in chat I missed. Excuse me. It's funny. Whenever I drink beer, this reminds me of my old Knights of Last Call, Rise of the Rune Lords days, where we would drink beer. And I actually had to stop drinking beer as much on the show, because even one beer makes me so hiccupy and burpy. It's hilarious. But this is a great beer. I usually have IPAs nowadays, and this is I don't know what kind of beer this is. It's brewed with dark German and Belgian malts, flaked maize, and Pearl and Saaz hops. So I don't know what kind of beer this would classify as. Anyways, it always makes me really burpy. I like it the other way around. The winner buys the beer. Craig, honestly, like, that's totally how I would do it now. It's like, hey man, I crushed you, and beer's on me. That is actually class, Craig. That is actually class. Steer says, I think what people want is, if the players stop paying attention or get lazy, they die. Otherwise, they are unkillable heroes that never lose. I mean, that probably is. Here's what I don't get, Steer. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And yet, so basically, people want it so that, like, look, as long as we play the game and we engage and, I make some effort to actually, make a smart decision, we will essentially win. But then why do people concern themselves so much with their builds and what feat they're going to take and how much damage they can put out? Like, I don't get it. Like, if you care that much, when I used to play Warhammer, I would sometimes spend hours, more time than I've ever spent on a TTRPG character. I would spend hours combing through the army books, trying to put together an army that was going to be able to give me some sort of an advantage or edge in my upcoming battle for that week. Trying to find a way to, cover my army's weaknesses and, advantage my strengths. I had to think about what armies my opponent might bring, because I knew he only had like 3 or 4 different armies. So I was like, okay, if he brings a Skaven, I need to make sure I have this kind of weapon, but I don't want to get too much on that, because what if he brings the demons, right? And like, it felt like it mattered because it did. But like if you're playing and your mindset is like, we just want to kill everything and you know, really just have fun and roll dice, then that's fine. I think that attitude is actually totally acceptable. But then why do you care about the tactical combat or your build or optimizing for that? It just doesn't make any. The two things to me seem very juxtaposed, and I have a hard time getting into the mindset where that makes any amount of sense to me. Basically, first player who looks at their phone loses their character. Yeah. I mean, I have always been historically a pretty, I've tried to keep people off of we don't allow tablets at our game system, but as the game, if we play a more complex game time these days, Ben, I got to tell you, I'm like, it's such a pain in the ass to look through these books. Even I have to admit it. We've come a long way from 30-page BX, 3-ring bound and stuck into a binder, 3-ring punched and stuck into a binder. What do you think of 13th Age's handling of this with retreating? I think retreating is fantastic. I think 13th Age handles this like the brilliant. I think the idea of the campaign loss is fantastic. I think that 13th Age is a very smart game which understands what they are doing and handles it well. I think 13th Age understands that because they have things like retreating rules and campaign losses, that you can include things in the game like nastier specials, which the game admits you could throw this on your monsters because it's awesome. And guess what? It's not really balanced. It's not really part of the CR math. There's nothing about this that is fair. You gave this creature this nastier special because it would make the character or the monster or the encounter more interesting or more realistic or whatever. And ultimately, the players can try to overcome it. But if the situation turns against them, they always have this option to retreat. And we don't get into the nitty gritties of it. We don't try to roll for it. We don't try to figure out how many attacks of opportunity they're going to take as they move away. Oh, but the monsters have a speed of 45 and the PCs only have a speed of 30. There's no way they could escape. No. We understand that we're playing a game. We understand that that game is attempting in some way to tell some sort of narrative ongoing story. It's not a board game. So we understand that we can just make that happen and make that up. But there's no free lunch. And while the characters may not be able to be killed, certainly everything around them in the world can burn. And that is what makes that such an interesting and compelling choice. Dan, combats are all fun until you have done so many of them, you find yourself asking why and to what end, which is absolutely true. I think that's especially true also. One of the things that we've been talking about this recently. Again, I don't want to like go and like gush. I don't want people to think like I'm like super gushing about the OSR, but like this idea that, in the original D&D game, this idea was you had this low level of play, I don't know, like 1 to 4. I mean, technically it was 1 to 3, but I really like to think of it as like 1 to 5. And in basic D&D, this was the level of the dungeon. And at this level, your characters' concerns were things like torches, water, random monsters, just getting randomly killed over by some goblin. Okay. And you played this now back in the day, nowadays this might take a group 8 weeks to go through. But in the old days, leveling was a bit slower, and you might be here for months. But this is like that basic dungeon play pattern that we've seen and sort of replicated in some ways throughout the course of the game. But the thing is, I think Gary, and if not Gary, certainly Menser, when he did his BX set, understood that at a certain point, this starts to get a little stale. And the game, in its brilliance, releases this expert set. And the idea of the expert set is overland travel. And at the same time that they release this, or the same time that you come into this, there's 2 things here. Number 1, you've been doing this for a while, and it's starting to get boring. Number 2, your characters are starting to acquire things like what? Light spells, create food, create water, divination spells, spells that help them locate their direction, right? You're starting to get magic or magic items, which are starting to sort of make this first tier of play kind of pointless. It's removing the challenge from, you know, the a dungeon exploring process. You've kind of beaten that point of the game. And so the game changes. The game escalates into a new phase of the game where now your concerns are more global. You're now traveling hundreds of leagues, going through epic journeys. You maybe have to manage a retinue of people. You're trying to tame wilderness. You're trying to explore lost lands. Now, things like light and stuff like that might not be as much of a concern. Now you're worried about how do we travel these great distances? How do we overcome the mighty challenges that the overland world has to offer us? But at the same time, we've got some, you know, skill under our belts, and we've got some abilities in our backpack, in our bag. So we're prepared to handle this, right? We have what we, you know, need in order to you know, overcome these challenges. And then what happens? Well, we do this for a couple levels, and then we start getting into a level 11. And Basic called this Master. I'm sorry, Companion. But for purposes of our description today, I'm going to call it Companion and Master. And I'm just going to say this is like a level 11 through 30 or 11 through 20, because Basic did go to 30. But here's the idea. Think about D&D. It's still designed this way, people. What happens when you get to level 10? You get teleport. You get shadow walk. You get, you know, wind walk, right? You get all these spells that suddenly sort of make overland travel not really much of a challenge anymore, right? Like the game, London, sorry that YouTube sucks and it's not working for you. I appreciate you, and I will certainly see you later. Yes, I know that officially, Ben, that those are the levels. I'm just sort of kind of converting it into like a modern day D20 stance. But the change here is now they're like, look, you have powerful characters. Okay. And the solution isn't to just keep throwing more powerful monsters at them. This is what computer games and computer role-playing games did to fantasy RPGs, and to kill them and destroyed them. The whole point of the game was that when you made it to this high of level, your character was sort of an unstoppable juggernaut. The number of foes that you should be thrown up against that, you know, that could have an equal chance of beating you should be slim to none, because your character is very, very, very powerful. But your magic and your spells and your ability and your wealth make crawling through dungeons and journeying overland kind of a thing of the past in a way. Now, you might still do it. I'm not saying it's 100% not, but the game said, okay, we're moving into the next section. Your characters are now, you know, heroes of the realm. They are now political leaders. Maybe they literally have their own domains or their own, you know, domains, or they have such power and influence that they become political whether they want to or not, right? Their favor with the people or the crown can sway armies. And suddenly the game becomes more about politics and land and resource management. It almost becomes like a 4X game. Now, alternatively, you might want to sort of go back and do overland and dungeon stuff again, but not in the real world, because it would be a joke. And that's where the outer planes come in. And suddenly your character is, you know, traversing through the volcanic ash fields in the plane of fire, because they're a high level character and it's supposed to be ridiculous and challenging. And that low level character would have no chance of this. And then eventually, as you reach the very end of the game, you know, to Immortal, you, and again, in actual Basic, this was 30 plus. This is where you're dealing with, you know, godhood, and you're dealing with issues of like the cosmic source balance of the universe, and you're battling literally for the fate of souls and morality and the ethics and all this other stuff. So the game was designed to not get boring because it changed. It measurably and notably changed. What you were doing in the early parts of the game was great for the early parts of the game. And as you got out of those first couple of levels, you would transition to a new phase of game, which had different challenges and required different skill sets and required you to have new abilities and new problems to solve. And some of those old problems just got erased or deleted because of the convenience of magic or skills or abilities or powers. And that was almost like a reward for the game of saying like, look, you did it the hard way because you were a FNG, you were just a new guy, and you did it the hard way. And now your character's higher level. Now, when you go into a dungeon, if it does come up, you're going to be like, oh man, remember when we had to do this with torches and we had to worry about rations? And now we have magical light spells and daylight spells, and we have create food and water. And this is just so much easier. Like, yes, the challenge is, here from a monster perspective, but it's almost like we get to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Now in Fantasy D20, the idea is it's like this idea that like the game experience is the same from 1 to 20. You're fighting goblins here. You're fighting giants here. You're fighting, demons here, but it's just like the same exact game over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until I guess either the adventure ends, everybody gives a board and quits, or you reach the end of the game. I guess there's no more monsters left in the book or no more levels left in your class. Congratulations. I guess you've won. Let's do it again. And that to me is not a really inspiring progress track. Quarter 4 just started, so I'm going to start wrapping up here. I want to say thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me this Sunday. This was fun. I mean, I know we were kind of all over the place, and this was a little bit more ranty than usual, but a little bit more unfocused. But again, it was just designed to be, just designed to hang out and have fun. As an alternative to watching the Super Bowl. Shadram says, I still don't know what a high-level PF2 game should look like. Me either, Shadram. I've got my 15th level party in a dungeon, but it doesn't seem right. And I imagine it would not. Published adventures don't help. And I will say, Shadram, that like, if you are going to do a dungeon, make it something big and bold. Like these characters are 15th level, right? Like they should be, if you're a 15th level character in a dungeon, it's like, okay, we're on the husk of a dead god floating in astral space, right? We are, making our way to the inner sanctum of Demogorgon's, inner temple or inner fane. Like a high level dungeon should be like, the players should feel like, okay, we are kicking ass, and this is not a place for kids. And a lot of times I've seen these high level dungeons, and it's just like some other keep or stone cave, and it's just very disappointing. I very disappointing in that. Ben says, rinse and repeat is one of the great failings of Fantasy 20. And I completely agree with Ben here. It's like, and again, this is, by the way, an example. This is not really the game's fault, I think. This is the game designers giving people what they want. Because I have a suspicion that even back in the day, but even with the modern gamer, if the game experience were to change like we had shown, where, it starts off this way and then it progresses to another phase of play, and then you get to the third phase of play where it's maybe more politics and realm management. I think you would have a lot of people complaining because they would say like, no, I just want to fight the same things over and over again. Why? Because that's what computer role-playing games did. That is what, because they couldn't do any of that other stuff. the computer role-playing games of the 80s and especially the 90s had no capability to do things like politics, domain management, exploration, building faction. Like, what could they do? They could do walking through dungeons, the basic 3D asymmetric view from like the 80s and 90s, Diablo style games. And they could do combat, bigger foes, more mana, more abilities, higher hit points, more devastating attacks, which don't do anything different because you're fighting more bigger things. And like 15, 20 years that happened. And people just said, oh, that's what D&D is. Like, that's what role-playing games are. They started to conflate what the limitations. Computer role-playing games couldn't be a real role-playing game. They had to be this horrible fake approximation, and MMOs too. But then like real life started imitating art, which itself was a bad copy of real life. Because then by the time you get to 3rd edition D&D, they like incorporated that and put that into the core structure of the game. And they kind of shot themselves in the foot because they listened to what people wanted. But apparently it worked because it sold really well, and it's making them a lot of money, I guess. Galarian says, Derek, don't you realize 15 minutes in football speech is still like an hour or two to go? It's still too early to wrap up. Right. But Gid, our tip goal to go through quarter 3 into quarter 4 was $150. And we did fall a little short of that, even though obviously people were incredible and amazing today. We have been live for over 3 hours. And so I thank everybody for those incredibly awesome and amazing and supportive tips. Looking at the score here, apparently it's close, which I guess is a good thing. It's a good thing people get to have an exciting football game. Lug says, Book 5 of Age of Ashes is amazing. They go against the Scarlet Triad, an international shady organization. They face demons working with the humans, and at the end is the boss. Okay. The dungeon is long. It is deep on a pyramid full of traps, enemies. They could rescue prisoners, talk their way out, fight some golems, etc. I don't know, Lug. Some of our patrons seem to feel like most of Age of Ashes is horrible. It's possible that some of them feel like Book 5. I don't remember if they feel like Book 5 was really good or Book 6 was really good. But I've never played Age of Ashes, so I am not an expert to discuss on that matter. But thank you anyways. All right. So want to say thank you to everybody. Tomorrow, we are doing our Patreon live stream where we'll talk a little bit about some of the future plans for the Patreon and get some ideas of what other cool, fun stuff we could do. We have 2 streams coming up this week, Tuesday and Thursday. I think we're going to do First Look Sentinel Comics on Tuesday. So if you're interested in learning about a relatively brand new superhero RPG with me that I've never seen before, join in on Tuesday. On Thursday, we're going to keep on doing those archetypes, people, because we're getting close to the end, and I am very eager to put this one to bed for once and for all. And of course, the painting is beginning. We are going to have our studio up and running sooner than you can think, and that is going to be so fun for us, people. We cannot wait to do these live shows. We cannot wait to have you people calling in as guests. And we cannot wait to have this fun, exciting conversations in person. And I'm so looking forward to it. Getting to hang out with some of my friends, bring back some of our old faces, get people back in the studio, get some games going, get some fun conversations and nightlifes going, and get some conversations and get feedback from you all and have you have the ability to sort of be part of the show in real time. I think would be fantastic and fun. So also, any heroes that are watching, obviously this month we had a couple things scheduled, so it's hard to do this. But for next month, remember, if any heroes ever, have any questions about any of that stuff, like about wanting to be on the show, or have an idea, like we had John on in December, we're gonna have Rick on, this month, by the end of this month or first Tuesday of March, to talk about Traveler. One of the perks of being a hero is, if you want to join the show, you're free to join the show. And honestly, I love having a co-host. It's fun to have people to bounce ideas off of. I love getting to jam with like Vin and Ben, or Ben and Vin. It's a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed having them on the show each time. So, if you're a hero and you want to talk and you want to be on the show and you've got a halfway decent mic and camera, and you're a hero, hit me up in the hero channel. Let me know what you might be interested in talking about, because I'd love to have you on. I think the patrons would love to hear from you as well. Lance, we did talk about Dungeon 23 a little bit. Yeah, I'm like a couple weeks behind. I want to knock out like 6 or 7 rooms to kind of basically get finished with level 1, and then I'm not gonna like try to catch up in level 2. Like, that's just kind of silly. I just need to get stuff done for that. But it's okay. I think I talked about it on one live stream. Doing a dungeon design 1 room at a time is a challenge for me. I usually lay things out beforehand, and then I sort of fill in the gaps. So I might need to go back and sort of create like a high level schematic or sketch of what I want the dungeon flow to be like, so that I can do that. But all right. Well, Ben says good night, fun stream. Shadram says, laughing out loud says, thank you. And Shadram says, thank you, Derek. And I am going to use that as my excuse to sign off. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time. If you're a patron, I'll see you tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll see you Tuesday. We're going to be talking Sentinel Comics first look. So we'll see you then. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the rest of the Super Bowl if you're watching. And we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace out.